I mean, no one's going to be watching this
Sarah Victory.
right this second.
She's technically first there.
Very low.
Check it out. They need it. People need it.
Yeah.
So I don't know why it's not displaying. Yeah, but oh, it's because of the
I
box.
blinked it.
Yeah, David's coming. He posted on there. He texted me. He's like, yeah, we're gonna get there like right on time. I'm like, yeah, whatever you need. We're gonna go to 9 exactly 9:30. Whatever. It's we're not like super strict on time. Okay. Let me leave it just before. Hi everyone. I don't want to yell right away, so we're gonna go ahead and kick things off. So welcome to some of our new shoppers who are able to join us this morning. I know NYU is here and University of Minnesota, so welcome everyone. Sorry. So the first item on our list today is we're going to hear from Rina Patel, and Rina represents a nonprofit. She's the founder, called Ahana, and I just want to give you a little bit of background about that before we get started. It's a nonprofit organization to help run the Mountain School in India, and the idea behind it is everyone is equal under the sun. And I'm going to let her explain that more through her presentation. Rina's done a lot of wonderful things within Drexel University, and her nonprofit's amazing, helps so many children and students in India. So excited to hear from that. And going forward with the theme today, you should be receiving emails soon. I think it's set on the timer. About the full schedule and how we're going to progress through. But we're just showing you different industries and showing that you don't have to always take the corporate route for a job. We're kind of showing that there is no unconventional career path. So kind of like eliminating that stigma. So last night we heard from food truck entrepreneurs, and I know they gave us like a great presentation. And then today we're going to hear nonprofits, startups. We are going to hear from a corporate, like a corporation, and then to close off that theme, we're going to hear from graduate school, in case anyone wants to further their studies. So without further ado, we're going to introduce Rina Patel from Ahana.
Hi everyone. Wait, so how do I change this? Is there there's a keyboard. Okay, cool. Hi, my name's Rina Patel. Thanks, Sarah, for the introduction. I'm gonna try and get out from behind the podium, but I don't know if you guys will be able to hear me, so I'll like stay here for some time and then get out of the podium. But who here like has experience working with nonprofits or like in the social impact world, or just like has a little bit of a background? Okay, so like a few people. Okay, good. So when you guys think of nonprofit, what comes to your mind right away? Just, like quick, you can just shout out whatever comes to your mind when you think of nonprofit. Cool. Okay, so I'll just like give you guys a brief background about Ahana. my journey, the reason why I started it, and then go more into social impact, what it means to me, and why I am taking the path I'm taking with my career and just everything in general. So this is Ahana, that's our logo. So I'll go into this a little more, but we believe that everybody's equal under the sun. Ahana means the first rays of the sun. So we believe that each child, each woman, each individual represents each ray of the sun, and that they're equal under the sun, pretty much. Okay, so who am I? I go to Drexel. I'm a junior right now. Well, I guess now I'm a senior, but I'm majoring in marketing and legal studies, minoring in international area studies and public health. I was raised right in the suburbs in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, by King of Prussia. I started Ahana in 2011. It didn't start picking up until 2012, my sophomore year at Drexel, and then my dream is to inspire others and touch lives. So the reason why I started Ahana was because I started going to India when I was about 11 or 12 years old, and I was just exposed, like my parents just never shielded me from poverty. I was exposed to abject poverty from a very young age. Both my parents were born and raised in poverty. My mom was married to my dad when she was 15 years old. She was pulled out of school when she was 11 to learn how to like cook and clean. And so from a young age, I saw how a lack of education can lead to like a decrease in the ability to think critically at an older age. And my dad, he like was finished high school, and then right when he was 18 years old, he moved to South Gujarat, which is the state where my parents are from, and he worked in diamond mining. So from a very young age, my parents were both kind of like on their own. My mom was working in a completely new village where my dad was from, and she was cooking for her in-laws, working the farm every day, and just like hearing their stories and going back to India and seeing children that were raised in a similar way that my parents were raised really just hit me from a very young age. And a lot of the villages that I visited growing up where rural, they lack basic infrastructure like healthcare and education system. A lot of these villages the government just didn't bother to go to just because they were so rural, and so a lot of these people just like live on hills, and they raise goats, they raise chickens, and then their children have to like walk miles to go to school, or they have to or they just like stay at home and take care of their siblings. So I kind of went into this. Ahana means morning glory, first rays of the sun. It's a Hindi word, but it's also a girl's name. So I'll go a little more into our model, and then kind of like what we're doing with that. So our overall mission is to abolish ignorance through education of social inequalities to empower communities in India. So we do this through 3 ways. We create relationships with local activists in India. So right now we're forming partnerships with 2 NGOs or 2 groups of young leaders in India, and we're empowering them to make changes in their community, whether it's education, healthcare, or employment. And so we kind of do this. Our approach initially was to take an individualistic approach to solving poverty, but over time we decided to take a more community-based approach, because a lot of the reasons for poverty in developing countries is because there's like a social construction problem. There's like social inequalities and that kind of thing. And over time and through working through India, working there, I just realized it's not effective to work on helping children individually. The only way change is going to happen is if you take a community-based approach, especially if you're working in communities like villages and especially rural areas where people aren't as educated. So the second thing that we do is we're partnered with the Human Research Foundation to support 67 disabled children at Monta School. We started this school in the summer of 2012 with our partner organization, the Human Research Foundation. And all these kids come from rural villages. They, just like I explained earlier, they come from rural areas, and they come from villages that lack basic infrastructure. In this case, like this is our first project, and we did take an individualistic approach, but through like trial and error and just like realizing how to best approach solving the issues where we work, we realized that we need to go into these actual villages that these kids come from and create change, because pulling them out of their villages is just not effective, like long term at all. So, and the third one is we help to educate and empower social activists in the United States that want to make change through our university chapters and speaker series events. So the biggest thing when I was 15 years old, when I decided I wanted to, do help people in India, was I would come back to the States and a lot of my peers wouldn't understand the things that I saw in India. Here I like to think that charity is very glamorized in terms of like galas and fundraising events and that kind of thing. And it's great, but I realized we are so far removed from the issues there being here in the United States, because we have all the facilities. We turn on our water every day. We have hot water. Everything's just easily accessible. And so we're so far removed that I realized that it's so hard to be attached to the issues. And so that's why I wanted to work to kind of create a network of millennials who would like to see change in the world. And through our university chapters, where we have ambassadors across the country, and through our speaker series events, we kind of create awareness about these global issues and kind of remove that gap between the issues over there and us living here in the United States. So this is kind of how our model works in India. So we mentor a young activist that's trying to make change in their village but needs guidance. They form their own group so they can become official partners of Ahana. And then the new group starts to address social inequalities and the resources that are needed in their village. Like I said, it can be really anything from education, healthcare, solving employment issues in the village. And then the other villagers see the positive developments, and then they're encouraged to help the cause. And then more young locals start on their own journey to create a better village. So we only started to implement this new model in the past, I think, less than 6 months ago, and we already have about a network of 25 young activists in India. We're still kind of creating, solidifying our model and what we're doing exactly, but we're seeing a positive response from, kids living in India. The biggest thing when I would go back to India is I'd see that a lot of children there are just immune to the poverty. So me coming in was just new because I was born and raised to, we're all not very immune to like abject poverty or like just that kind of poverty. It's very different from the poverty we see here. And so so it was just really interesting to like find other people who like weren't really as interested in the social issues. But then I started realizing that they're more immune to the social issues there. But, once you start addressing it and kind of just talking to people and seeing what they think, people actually are on board to help. And, that's kind of how we found all these young leaders in these villages, which is awesome. Is for people to make change in the villages to elevate the quality of life in India. So the reason why we work in rural areas rather than urban areas is because in rural areas, a lot of the issue is people want to stay there. They don't want to leave and go to urban areas. But it's kind of like the same thing here. Like we, move to the city or come to the city for a job, same thing over there. The people, they save up money and then they move to the urban areas thinking that there's going to be work. And they move to these urban areas because, they don't have accessibility to healthcare and jobs and education and all that. So they save up all their money. They go a couple hours away to this urban area and then they find that there are no jobs. And that's how we find these urban slums developing in the cities in India. And that's kind of like where we see a lot of these like people living in tents on the side of the road and that kind of thing. So that's kind of why we're putting more of an emphasis on rural areas, because we want to create infrastructure so that people want to stay in these areas. And so, because the urban areas they're just going to keep growing and growing and the issues are just going to become greater and greater. But if we can create infrastructure in these rural areas, people are more inclined to stay. So in the United States, it kind of went into this. A college student hears about our message at a speaker series event. She tells her friend about the inspiring message she heard. After thinking about it, they become motivated to make a change. They decide to help spread the message by starting a university chapter at their college. They hold a speaker series event where they invite knowledgeable professionals to speak in a panel. And then Ahana's message is spread, and then the chain reaction has started. So it's a very simple model, and we kind of did that on purpose. We left it very ambiguous on purpose because we know it's going to change as we start developing as an organization. one of the biggest things is our approach is very, very unique because we don't put an emphasis on raising money. I think I held a fundraising event, I think a couple of years ago when I first started at Ahana, and then I never did a fundraising event ever again because I realized if we're creating enough awareness about these issues and if we're touching enough people and empowering enough people, the money's just going to come. And not once in the past couple of years have we had funding issues just because we feel like we're doing a good job in terms of empowering people, that people have just decided just donate it by themselves, and not once have we seen our bank account like at zero. So that's kind of the model we take. We have a very low budget and a high impact model. So we just believe in empowering people, and we believe that everything else will come after that. So it's kind of risky, but it's also kind of empowering at the same time, just because you really see that you're making an impact on these people, or whether they're here or in India, and then you just see that the money's just kind of coming in, and it's not something you have to worry about, which is pretty cool. So I kind of went into this. Essentially, we believe that people are the individuals to be the agents of their own change. So it's kind of it is kind of when we first developed the vision and the mission statement, we realized that it's going to be difficult to change mindsets, because that's the hardest thing to do in the world, like to go into a community and change the way people think. But if you go to the core, and like I said in the beginning, if you go to the core of any issue, whether it's here in the United States or in India or in Africa or China or wherever you go, the issue is about attitude. It's about like the social construction around disease or poverty. And so if you don't get to the core and change the way people think, or work with people themselves and empower people themselves to realize these issues, really no change, no amount of money is going to help. And so that's why we believe in high impact, low budget. So this is just timeline milestones. In December 2011, I was a freshman. I think it was after fall of my freshman year. I went to India. We partnered with the Human Research Foundation. We started Montessori School with 30 students, and then we received our first donation in August 2012. In December 2013, took us about a year and a half. We finally received 501c3 status, which is like the official status to become a nonprofit. In April 2014, I officially formed a team. And then in May 2014, we had a total of 67 students who were 5 to 18 years old. In summer 2014, we officially established 4 university chapters. One was informally established. Since then, we have about 4. We don't really have 5 anymore, just because people drop off or that kind of thing. And then October 2014, we received our first $5,000 grant. So this is kind of just how our partnership works. We bring disabled children and orphans out of the rural areas. We provide them with free tools to become healthy, educated, make a living despite their disability. So our kind of goal is to bring them into this nurturing environment, empower them, and then eventually the goal is to have them go back into their community and kind of create change and be empowered to do something and help other lives. And so I wanted to go over into this. I wanted to show you guys this video. How do I do this? Because it kind of gives you guys an idea of why I decided to take a more of a approach away from actually emphasizing money and kind of focus more on social issues. And it just talks about the inequality gap, the income gap, and all of that. And I think you guys will find it really interesting. So hopefully this is. I don't have to do anything, right?
People are talking a lot about inequality these days.
Can you guys hear it?
That the richest 1% have so much more than everybody else. But most of the focus seems to be on the United States. And it strikes me that the same story needs to be told about global inequality too. So I did some research, and this is what I found from reliable sources like the UN. It turns out that while the US is totally out of whack, things are actually way worse for the planet as a whole. Let's start with this graph. A perfectly even distribution of wealth among all living people, with everyone divided into 5 equal groups. Now, let's show how much each group Meanwhile, the richest 2%, they have more wealth than half of the rest of the world. Let's look at this chart another way. Let's take the whole world's population, all 7 billion of us, and reduce it to just a representative 100 individuals. Here they are. Poorest people on the left, richest people on the right. Now let's show how the world's total wealth, roughly $223 trillion, is distributed. The vast majority have practically nothing. Nothing with which to educate their children, nothing with which to pay for basic medicines. While the richest 1%, they've accumulated 43% of our world wealth. The bottom 80%, meanwhile, that's 8 out of every 10 people, have just 6% between them. But even this doesn't really show how extreme things have become. The richest 300 people on Earth have the same wealth as the poorest 3 billion. So the number of people it takes to fill a mid-sized commercial aircraft have more wealth than the populations of India, China, the US, and Brazil combined. We can also see this difference geographically, with a huge and growing gap between a few rich places versus the majority of the world. For most of history, things were much more equal. 200 years ago, rich countries were only 3 times richer than poor countries. By the end of colonialism in the 1960s, they were 35 times richer. Today, they're about 80 times richer. Rich countries try to compensate for this by giving aid to poor countries, about $130 billion each year. That's a lot of money. So then why does the wealth gap keep getting bigger? One reason I've found is that large corporations are taking more than $900 billion out of poor countries each year through a form of tax avoidance called trade mispricing. On top of this, each year poor countries are paying about $600 billion in debt service to rich countries on loans that have already been paid off many times over. And then there's the money that poor countries lose from trade rules imposed by rich countries to get access to more resources and cheaper labor. Economists from the University of Massachusetts calculate that this costs poor countries about $500 billion a year. Altogether, that's more than $2 trillion that flows from some of the poorest parts of the world to the richest every year. Governments like to say they're helping poor countries develop, but who's developing who here? This makes me think that there's something wrong with the basic rules of the global economy. It can't be okay that the wealth of our planet is becoming so concentrated in the hands of such a tiny number of people. The only reasonable response, it seems to me, and our only hope, is to change the rules.
How many of you guys are like aware of the statistics or like have an idea of the statistics that they showed in this video? Okay, so like a good amount of you guys. Yeah, so that was that video was like incredibly, like, for me when I watched it, I was like, wow, like, I mean, I had been doing work in India for a couple years at that point, but I like really didn't realize that the wealth gap was like that huge. So that's kind of why we're taking the approach we're taking. I was in India in December, and I was talking to my cousin's son. I don't really have much family left in India now, but it's like my one cousin and her family lives there. And her son's about like my age. He's 22, I'm 21, but he's like a year older than me. So we were talking, and he was kind of like, it's interesting, like, like India like has like so much agriculture, like, rice and, all these different types of fruits and vegetables and that kind of thing. But, why is there so much poverty here? Like, why aren't people getting wealthy when there's so much opportunity and there's so many crops and that kind of thing? And it's just like, there's just a couple of people that just own a majority of it. And these, people who are, like doing the actual labor, they're just not moving up in the ranks. There's no mobility and there's no opportunity for mobility. And when you go to the core of it, like I said, it's all about the class system. It's all about, these like hierarchies, these social hierarchies. So it's really interesting to see like how all of those issues put into statistics, because it's not very often that we see that. It's kind of like it's shielded from, society. And so it's really interesting. So I wanted to move into more of like a discussion-based kind of format, because I want to hear your thoughts on what you guys think about our approach, what you guys think about social impact, and just startups in general. So I guess like my first question is what what kinds of issues have you guys seen in the United States that you guys think are very similar to the issues that we see in developing countries? Like I'll put one out there. We see racial inequalities here. We see a lot of things like in the news happening around like race, and in India we see a lot of the issues around the class system. So it's not necessarily there. It's not necessarily about what your skin color looks like, but it's about your status in society, whether you're the higher class or the middle class or the lower class. So like what other kinds of I guess issues do you guys see that are kind of like parallel?
I guess often see, especially as growing up in high school and stuff, there are a lot of programs for kids that aren't as fortunate or don't have good role models and things like that in younger generations. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And how do you guys see like, because I know everybody here is like pretty multidisciplinary. Like you guys have, you guys are engineering, business, anybody in like the sciences, like hard sciences or anything? No, but okay. So I feel like we're like a pretty multidisciplinary group. So like, how do you guys feel like we can leverage our own skills, our own talents, what we're learning in school, to kind of work to solve these issues? Because we are seeing people taking a now like very untraditional path with their different backgrounds and that kind of thing.
I like the idea that your group focuses on building infrastructure rather than, charity is great, but it's important to create sustainable growth.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm a mechanical engineering major, and so it's easy to leverage engineering to build infrastructure in poor areas like that. So
yeah, definitely, and that's another kind of like thing going off of that is when we're creating infrastructure, like I said, we're working with young leaders in these villages. And what we realized being here in the United States, as an organization here, we really, really don't know what goes on every single day there. In a sense, for any business to strive, you have to know your customer, right? And like I know my customer, but everybody on my team, I think one other person on my team has been to India with me. Besides that, there's 12 of us total. Only 2 out of 12 of us have been to India and actually met the people we're helping. So how can we actually help people in India if we're so far removed from them? And that's why we're, taking this approach to working with people and empowering people there, because they're the ones that are on the ground. They're the ones that are constantly in touch with, these, our customers essentially. And if like any business, if you don't know who your customer is, and if you're not constantly interacting with your customer, your business is going to fail. And that's how we realize like our organization is not going to be sustainable. We're not going to touch lives. We're not going to have long-term impact on the people we're helping if we're not taking an approach where we're constantly working with the people, working with our customers. So yeah, that's another thing. But yeah, good point, Matt. Anything else? Do you guys have any questions for me overall? Sarah?
Oh,
All right.
you go.
Yeah, how do you actually find these people in one of the villages? Do you go yourself?
Yeah, so the first village, actually, for the past few years, I've been trying to like evolve this approach more. And I was first inspired by my dad's village, because my dad's village has so many social issues. It's been like that since he was young. And there's just such a hierarchy. And so I was looking for a really long time in my dad's village, and then little did I know my cousin's son, as he was in college and started like learning more about these issues, he became interested, and him and his friends wanted to do something. They just didn't have a means and they didn't know how to. So I just through just like talking to a lot of young people, I found him, and I knew him, but like I found his friends. So now there's like 4 of them in my dad's village, doing this. And then the other young leaders were just like by word of mouth. There are a ton of NGOs in India, as you guys probably know. And so I went to a city, it's about an hour away from where our village is and where our school is currently being operated. And it's called Manav Sadhana. Well, the city's called Ahmedabad, but the NGO that I went to is called Manav Sadhana. And Manav Sadhana works in urban slums, and there it's next to where Gandhi started his Salt March, and so it's a very like they think of it as like a very blessed place. So a lot of these young leaders will just kind of like congregate there. They'll just like go there. And I went to this NGO just to make more connections, like more political connections, and just meet more people who would be able to further my work. And that's where I met this one kid who was like who wanted to work with these 13 young leaders that work in these like tribal villages. And these kids are educated, they've gotten their MBAs, and they've just like left their jobs, and they're working in these completely rural areas that are like, you know, these tribal villages that have 200 people living in them. And like I said, the government doesn't even want to go there. The government's kind of like, it doesn't exist. It's not on a map. It's not our issue. And these villages are just so rural that like, there's just like so much poverty. And so these young leaders have decided to just like leave their jobs and just go into these villages and like literally just like pardon my language, but like just like live like shit and just like build these villages from like the bottom up. And I met that one kid who, you know, just knew of these like 13 young leaders, and he's like in the process of starting his NGO, but he has just like no idea like how to help these people. Like, and we were talking about it, and the biggest thing that these kids need, and like they're our age, they're like 21, 22, 23 years old. And the biggest thing that they need is emotional support. And I was like, well, you know, that's where we can come in. We're kind of like that middleman. We can tell the world about what they're doing, and we can also provide them with the necessary tools that they need, and also help them strategize as to like how to build infrastructure. Because, you know, that's the talent we have, that's like our skill set, you know? So yeah, that's kind of like how I've found them.
Oh, yeah, there's a bit there.
It's fine.
Just because like I know that you've gone to India a bunch of times, but can you kind of explain more about like how you create such a strong channel with, I mean, Ahana is here, but it's your work is in India. So how do you manage to do that? And like where is your like communication, and how is your support system kind of like structured in the village?
Yeah, so we're like still creating that structure and all of that, but the biggest, that communication was like a huge issue, especially with our partner organization, because the guy running our school right now is in his 60s, and he's just like, in December I gave him a laptop and was like, set up Wi-Fi here, like, and like, so I can actually email you and I don't have to like call you, and like you can actually like, because he doesn't know how to use a computer, so he has to hire somebody to send me emails pretty much. And like, it's just like wasn't efficient. Like for the longest time, every year I'd be like, all right, like get a computer, like set up Wi-Fi. And then like, you know, he's just like, and then like last year he was like, okay, I like need you to buy me a computer for the school and stuff. And I was like, okay, I bought him a computer. We didn't have time to like, cause I was only there for 3 weeks and then school started. And so I was like, okay, well, like I'm trusting you'll set up the Wi-Fi. And he like hasn't set up the Wi-Fi yet. Is still hiring people to send me emails, and like, so it's just like the communication portion is like a huge issue. Right now, I keep in touch with like the young leaders, like they're better at it. They know how to use computers. And so I communicate with the young leaders in my dad's village through WhatsApp. And it's just like very grassroots. It's a very grassroots way. And like I communicate with the kid that works with those like 13 kids working in those rural areas through email, or we'll like call each other. I have like international calling on my phone. But the biggest thing is it's really difficult just like trying to create like a strong channel, because it's something that we're still developing. We're still developing our relationships, and we're still, you know, solidifying like a way to, you know, really communicate. But it just changes all the time because of the time difference. And then the most progress I make is when I go to India, and at times it's very disheartening, because I'll like go to India, we'll like make all this progress, and then I'll come back home, and then it's like we'll take like 20 steps back, and it's like I was never in India in the first place, you know. But I think the biggest thing is most of my time when I'm in India, I spend like just 24/7 with people, just talking to people, talking to them about like my dreams and making it very, very personal. And I feel like that's what keeps, you know, the juices flowing, and how like people stay like very like motivated and like, I guess like in touch with me and like the work that Ahana does. Does that answer your question?
Kind of. More along lines of what the students or what the representatives like actually
actually doing.
Yeah.
So right now they're pretty much, since I said like our relationships are like fairly new, right now they're currently like creating a base around their villages. And so, for example, I'll like use my dad's village as an example. The young leaders there are mainly, right now they're establishing their NGO, and then they're non-governmental organization, and then their next approach is to really just like put on paper, just address all the issues, just address like every single issue that they find in the village, and then start from absolute scratch and just see where they can like improve on each issue. So what they'll be doing is just going out into the village, doing assessments, just like very like basic public health stuff, like just like looking at statistics, like how many kids are in school, how many kids are not in school, because that village has like the worst, has the like biggest dropout rate. Most of the kids don't go to school. Most of the kids are working on the farm. A lot of the girls get married, at least from like the lower class, and a lot of the girls get married by the time they're 12 or 13 years old. And while they'll stay in their village, they just don't get educated because they're already kind of like already engaged or married. And so they'll kind of like, right now they're working on just like establishing their NGO, and then they're gonna go out and do assessments over the next year. And then when I go to India in August, that's when we're actually gonna start creating an actual structure, and creating a plan as like kind of like an action plan as to where to go from there. And then in the tribal villages, like where those 13 young leaders are, I'm mainly working with that guy, like I mentioned. His name's Meet, the one that I met in the city, and when I go to India in August, that's where I'm gonna go to these different villages, these different tribal villages. But up until then, he's doing the same thing, kind of establishing his NGO. In the next month, he's gonna kind of take a tour and go to all these villages. He's gonna bring back as much information as he can, like as much statistics about, if there is a school, if there's not a school, if kids under 5 are dying, what are they dying from? Or if they're getting sick, what are they getting sick from? What are the biggest issues? Is it a water issue? Is it, food insecurity? Is that an issue? Are there employment issues? Just kind of like looking at all the issues, and then from there we're kind of just gonna like create an action plan. But that's not gonna happen until I go to India in August. So does that answer your question? Okay, cool. Matt, you had a question?
Yeah, I forgot what it was.
So I firmly believe as well income inequality is a real thing, but I was wondering if you could kind of sum up in a short kind of, call it minute or so, what do you see as the best ways to address income inequality, and how would you solve it?
I think it just goes back to the social issue. So I'll try and keep this like brief, but and I'll use my dad's example, my dad's village as an example. It's called Sapar, by the way, the village. And so the issue there is the lower class, and then there's the higher class. And so the higher class is considered like the Patels, like my, like I guess like my last name, or like my relatives that live in the village. And then there's the lower class, who are like the laborers, and they're the people that work for the Patels essentially. And there's a higher population of the lower caste. And so currently they have somebody that's elected into office to be like the village leader. That village leader is from the lower class because he was elected because there's more people that are of the lower class than there are of like the higher class. But what's happening is that the lower caste and that village leader is being suppressed by the higher caste, because the higher caste has more money and has more like, authority and power over the lower caste. And it is because they have more money, but it also is because just over like the past generations, it's just kind of like, it's like ingrained into the culture that like the higher caste has more power, because they're the ones that employ like all of the laborers that are in the village who are of the lower caste and that kind of thing. And so you see like how the higher caste is consistently suppressing this lower caste, and it remains as a cultural issue, like it's just ingrained into society. And the biggest way that we're addressing the income inequality issue is just trying to work with, and that's kind of why we chose these 4 boys. These 4 boys are of the Patel caste, but they're the only ones that are actually going to be able to stand up and like figure out how to change, because right now it's like it's a very like, it's just the village is dominated by older men who are from like the Patel caste. And so the biggest issue is that these men aren't like changing the way they think, and there's a temple in the village, and the temple is on the board. There's just Patels that sit on the board, and the village school is on the temple's land. And the village school, only like the lower caste kids go there. None of the higher caste kids go there, just because I'm using lower caste, higher caste just to kind of differentiate. Like I don't really believe it's lower higher, but just to kind of differentiate the two. And so none of the Patel kids go to this village school. Like all the Patel kids go to private schools in the city. And so all the kids that are of the lower caste, they go to this village school, but that village school is being kind of like, even though it's a government school, it's being run by the Patels. And the Patels are just not giving education to these kids because they're like, oh, well, none of the Patel kids are in the school, so like we don't need to worry about it. Like these kids are gonna drop out anyway. They're gonna do the same thing that their parents are doing. So it's like this mindset that kind of like makes this like cycle of, like poverty keep going, makes these, this income inequality kind of like keep like this gap getting bigger and bigger. And so we're starting through kind of working with these young kids. We're trying with these like young leaders, we're trying to have this like this mindset change, at least by these young kids like working with the higher caste, because because these older men, they're not going to change their mindsets unless some young boy, it's like bad to say, but if these like young leaders, if these young boys like who are educated don't actually say something. Because right now everybody's scared to even say anything because the lower caste is employed by the higher caste, and so they have no power. And so these, people think it's wrong, but nobody wants to do something about it, So that's why we're trying to solve this like income inequality by addressing these issues, and then, create a group of leaders who want to actually like tackle them and actually do something about it, and who aren't afraid of the consequences.
So to sum it up, like education and action.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess parallel this more into kind of a discussion as well, but one of the issues with income inequality is the owners of capital now. So think of Apple. Apple has $184 billion in cash. They are a massive company. They've built things that we probably all own. And there's X number of people who work at Apple, but they make a significant amount of money off of that. Before, you had a much smaller base of companies. They were more distributed. Walmart's another great example, where the people who own those companies, of course, are getting a lot of this capital. They're the ones that are able to kind of scale across the world. They're the ones that are able to kind of reach a broad set of people. And that in itself is creating income inequality. And technology is a huge aspect of it as well. So before, look at like Mark Zuckerberg. He's someone who created a service that people use and take their time to use every single day. He now, of course, is very wealthy because of that. But again, you could argue from some of those other people who may have had products before that were providing a similar service. And going forward, I think you have a lot of issues with education and how to get other people who aren't in that, call it caste or whatever you will, they're not able to kind of succeed because they don't have those resources, they don't have the skill set, they don't have the programming knowledge, whatever it may be. I think in the US, you even see it, there's a big mismatch between skill sets and what companies are trying to hire. That's why we've had the unemployment rate as high as we have for a while. It's obviously come down since 2009, but there's a big still mismatch between those people who are still out of the labor force and maybe want to come back in, and they don't have the skill set to do it, and companies won't hire them. So Obama is trying to push some programs that are basically trying to get people to go to community college to do things to try to pick up those skills. And I think that's a great mission you guys have of trying to get those skill sets, trying to educate people of, look, everyone deserves a fair chance at education. And yeah, I think it's a great mission.
Yeah, and kind of just like going off of that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add a couple points. Andrew, before I came back to my graduate degree and started to teach, I worked in industry for a corporation. I grew up in a very small community here in Pennsylvania, in the anthracite coal regions of Pennsylvania. There a lot of what you're describing in India, not to the extent, but a lot of this same thing, as Andrew said, occurs right here in our backyard as well. You go to a community I grew up in and then come here, or go maybe live in State College, and it's completely different. And people back where I grew up, a lot of people don't even, they just, because generations been passed down, they don't look at education. All right, so a lot of it still exists here. So one of the things I might add is that is there a model that worked in the States that you could kind of, because it seems like there's a lot of ideas being generated, but can you tap into the resources in the States where we saw a successful model here in the States? The same thing exists here in the United States.
Yeah.
The other side of it is, and Andrew, I really believe it explained this pretty well. This is going on in the United States big time in terms of the social inequality and where the money's going. Because let's just go back, 20 years when I was growing up. Most of the folks in the town I grew up in, I'm friends with my parents. I was the first one to go to college in my family. All right, but the people in my community, they were able to make enough money working manufacturing jobs to be able to feed their family. All right, they had health insurance from their job. They were able to feed their family and able to send the kids off to trade school or off to college and have enough money. What happened with that? Well, technology is part of it. All right, some of the jobs have been, become obviously automated, and some of the technology, it's coming to that community. A lot of stuff's been out, offshored. People lost those jobs, so now those people don't have those access to those jobs that are good paying. They can feed their families, send the kids off to school. What I'm really trying to get at, though, is I saw this when I worked in the corporations, is that really at the end of the day, what it comes down to the balance sheet and income statement. Years ago, people he hit on it, profit sharing in companies, where the father worked, or the wife maybe was a homemaker, was able to spend time with the children, raise the family, and one person could provide. So, and now the people, if they have a job, they're not getting profit sharing. All right. They're making their hourly wage. Companies are still making money, but where's it going? All right. They're still making money, and we want this unprecedented growth every day. Where's that money going? Well, it's going back into the company, into cash, or it's going back to dividends, right? And it's going to the shareholders. Well, who holds all the shares? The people with the money already, right? So the folks that, the hardworking folks that they're not seeing the profit sharing anymore. And even more on top of that, even retirements, they continue to keep changing people's retirement structure too. So once we had pensions, people got rid of pensions, now they're able to give maybe a little bit of money for a 401k, but God knows if people are going to be able to retire if they work for 30 years on average job, 40 years, right? So I see a lot of it coming down to the financial side of it. They're doing everything they possibly can to pull down expenses that, spikes to our balance sheet and income statement and make the shareholders happy. But at the same time, that recycling of that money is going back to the folks that own the ownership and own, have all the shares, and they already have money, right? It's not profit sharing anymore. I know when I can remember my parents talking about friends of theirs that worked in manufacturing that were getting bonus checks. All right, these are people that didn't have a college degree or a trade degree, that were getting bonus checks at the end of the year that were, a quarter or half of their salary that the company was giving back to the employees. That doesn't happen anymore. And it really all goes back to, the shareholders and, good financial statements and anywhere we can cut an expense. And that's where I really see the root of the problem there. That's what it all comes down to. Yeah. And I have to teach that in my classes because it's true, right? I teach engineering economy and say, guys, at the end of the day, you're an engineer and you're trying to make a case to invest in something. You have to convince your boss how that's going to improve their financial statements, right? So the more money goes back to retained earnings. Apple's sitting on $200 billion in cash, right? And the rest of it goes back to dividends to the shareholders. So those people have money. That's why they own stock, right? And then who's left? The people that really I described, the people that are hard working, they're not getting a piece of the pie. So I see this because I grew up in an area where really, you go back to where I grew up, and there's really not much left anymore.
To quickly parallel off of that too, and this I think goes kind of to your mission as well, but if you look around the world, the US is kind of an anomaly in terms of we believe in capitalist society, we believe in everyone should have a chance to succeed if they work hard. If you go to Europe and pitch that same sort of mentality that, hey, we work hard, we're gonna have the 1% hold very significant amount of the wealth, and the other portion of the society holds, a much, much lower percentage. You go to Europe and they would laugh at you and say, this is an absurd system, you don't believe in that. Europe, especially the Scandinavian countries, they have a much more socialist kind of mentality. They believe in more even distribution. Healthcare is different, their pensions are different, everything is more even. If you look at the US, of course, we believe in this. We believe in hard work gets you to where you are, and that's how you succeed. And there is some value to that. I mean, obviously, I think the reason you've done so well as kind of a country is because of that mentality. But then there's plenty of books on this, and Piketty, I don't know if you guys have heard of him, but he obviously wrote a book on it, worth a read. But that kind of goes to eventually you reach a point where it becomes unsustainable, where you have the 1% holding so much of the wealth that everyone else below you is kind of worse off. And I think that's where you look at like India as well. Of course, that system, Modi obviously was recently elected, and he's doing some wonderful things for the country, pushing a lot of reform that I think is going to get India to a state where they're going to start creating more opportunities, creating more jobs. Education is going to be different. The whole agricultural system that you mentioned before was very corrupt, and he's kind of wiped that out and said corruption is not allowed anymore, even within the government. He's getting rid of that. So I think he, as a leader, I mean, came, I think, from the same province or you grew up in, or your family's from, but he's doing a lot of great things that I think will get India to that point. But India, of course, I think is going to follow the same type of mentality of everyone should have an equal opportunity to succeed. And I don't know, call it 100 years from now, it's going to be a similar situation, but you're going to have the same sort of capitalist society where you have people who do get more wealth because of this. And hopefully it pulls up everyone along with it. But eventually you kind of get this uneven skew where people who hold most of the wealth hold a very significant portion of the wealth.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and that kind of goes back to, because that's something our team talked about a lot. We were like, all right, well, we're solving all these issues in India, and that's kind of how like our United States model kind of came about educating. You know, these are the types of conversations we want to have in our speaker series and in on our university chapters and that kind of thing. And we thought about like, you know, what about like the United States? We're doing work in India. Like, why aren't we addressing issues here, right? Because the same issues exist right here, like you mentioned. And so that's, you know, where, you know, we were, you know, like brainstorming different ways we could do something here in the US. And then we realized we were like, this is like such a big picture issue. Like, this is such an, like, right now, what we can do in terms of our capacity as an organization, we can only create awareness about these issues. One day, hopefully, we can, like this video said, we can change the rules, but like right now as an organization, we don't have the capacity to do that. We can only create awareness and get these discussions started. And that's exactly what we want to do, because, you know, this is, you know, it's a very like top-down issue if you think about it. It is like a bottom-up issue, but it's also a very top-down issue. Like a lot of these issues only the government or like, you know, those top stakeholders can address, and it's not going to happen unless we, you know, people start creating a buzz around it, you know. But yeah, those are all great points. Really, really great. I'm glad you guys, it's 9:30, so should I wrap it up or? Okay, okay.
I know that you're not like, you don't really look for funding because it's not an issue, but have you seen any, like, have any of the wealthier, I guess, people in India, like, gaining interest for what Ahana's doing?
Yeah, so Andrew mentioned, Modi is the prime minister right now. He was previously the chief minister of Gujarat, which is, you know, pretty much the leader of Gujarat, because he's from that area. But the guy who's literally works like under him, who used to work under him, who's the chief minister, has taken a lot of interest in what Ahana's doing and has really helped out. He is like a family friend, so he's taken a lot of interest. He's very wealthy, but he's also very in tune with these issues and is really trying to just like, you know, like wipe the corruption from the system. And so he's taken a lot of interest in Ahana, and a lot of political leaders in the villages that we work in have taken a lot of interest in terms of what we're doing, and they're really on board to help, which is great. And we are seeing a lot of people who are wealthier, who own like steel corporations, that kind of thing, like taking interest, which is kind of like ironic because in some sense they're like the root of a lot of the issues. But it's good that we're at least like creating awareness, and that, you know, we're at least you know, planting the seed in their minds, even if they're not going to change what they're doing right now. So yeah. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. Well, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Oh, thank you.
And grab this t-shirt. Okay, yeah, I'll sit it. Okay. So thank you, Rina. Once again, it was great to hear. So if you guys want to grab like extra coffee or whatever you just left, we're gonna get started in like about a minute or two with our next event. We have David Hunt, who's one of the co-founders of SPOR, which we'll get into that in a minute. But his startup entrepreneurial story is really exciting and
how him and his co-founder's product has kind of really taken off in the past, 18 months even. So, go ahead, grab an extra coffee or a snack if you need, and then we'll come back in and get started.
I told you I can't turn it on and off from the Wi-Fi. Remember I said I'd let the Wi-Fi over there? So what it does is when you turn the camera off, it keeps Bluetooth on. And then you use the Bluetooth to turn the Wi-Fi on the video. Yeah. Good. Better than I thought. Fine, because so I can turn it on and off.
Oh, you can?
Yeah. So you connect over Wi-Fi to control it, but when you power it off, Wi-Fi turns off. So this blue thing is still Bluetooth.
To the entire world. And it will be safe.
Sure, you could do it.
Go back to our super.
It's cold now. You're just too used to that. You grabbed the show like I was
No, but I'm like on one end.
Oh, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, definitely as well. Because that other one I was like, the one that I was using. Same as the way she got to talk himself. It's Sam. He does weird stuff. Oh my god. Sorry, I'm trying to yeah, no, that's what we did. We did like 4 different
That's a good.
yeah.
And that was so you can make more.
Yeah, I wanted to like try. It's so that's what I'm thinking. Like I see sometimes it's just like then I have to. Yeah. It's like, man, it's got back from my really friend. It's like Oh yeah. You were talking. Oh yeah. Enjoyed the conversation. I noticed, like, I woke up at like maybe 5 and I was like, where am I? All right, okay. And then I looked over and I'm like, it's like, I respect you. Try the bathroom.
The problem is when you start to stop thinking about
That's true. No,
I like also
I've never done that. Why have you done that? I was like 15 with my dad. It's insane. I'm like, okay, it's only when I'm 6. It's only, it's like, I'm like, yeah. Right. So that's why when we woke up, everything. I was born talking about.
I was reading some like sentence over there. I was like, is that like years?
I think I talked about this before. I thought you were on your laptop. So speaking.
No, I was like kind of in and out because I can hear you guys talking. Talking really quietly. Like, what are you talking
I had to throw one out.
I was still hot. It was so hot. I wanted to switch with you. That thing was way too we should switch. I want that cheap. You want that I don't want it. It's so I'll even swaddle you if you feel then I'm gonna need to machine it.
Hi, everyone. Usually don't use a microphone.
But we're gonna go ahead and get started again. I'm gonna bring up David Hunt to talk about the whole idea behind how he came into the startup you're going to learn about, and I feel like I don't even give you an intro. Like your intro is like yourself.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is David Hunt. Really cool story about the product that him and his friend came up with, and how two very different mindsets kind of came together. So we'll just leave with Dave.
Good morning. How are you all? No, you don't have to clap or anything like that.
Oh.
Like we're good. We're gonna try to make this engaging. Question me and jump in whenever you need. All that good jazz or bad jazz or whatever it is. So, as Sarah said, David Hunt. I am a Southern boy at heart, North Carolina, Charlotte to be exact. Born and raised, then came up here to Philadelphia to go to school at Drexel University, the building that you are in currently. I'm not sure where to start, so I'll give just a little detail. I just graduated last June. So out there in the quote unquote real world and running a startup or co-running a startup. I did 3 co-ops. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with the co-op system at Drexel, but kind of like the proverbial internships, but for an extended amount of time, and you might get paid or you might not. I was lucky enough to get paid for those internships, so I did one at Johnson & Johnson for marketing, and I did 2 at a firm called the Haverford Trust Company, which was really based around research analytics for equities, publicly traded companies, things of that nature for high net worth individuals. So that's all the boring stuff. Now let's kind of like shift into something more engaging. So SPOR. Trying to figure out where to start. So first I'm going to tell you about the genius, right? So one thing you'll learn in college is you got to diversify your skill sets, things of that nature. So Jason Brown is the co-founder and the originator of the idea for SPOR. And what SPOR is a solar-powered battery charger for mobile devices. The company as a whole creates solar-powered charging systems. So everything from generation, so solar panels, to storage, which is the solar-powered battery charger, to transmission, USB cables, adapters, things of that nature. So is anyone familiar with Arduino? Okay, cool. Jason was just trying to figure out a way to power his blinds, to be honest with you, like open those up because he didn't want to open them up when he woke up, just wanted this sign to be like, hey, but he realized like, if you do that, you're going to constantly have to change out the battery. So he's like, all right, I'm just going to strap a solar panel to it, which continued to evolve into the idea of this handheld solar-powered battery charger for your mobile devices, from anything from a tablet to a phone to your GoPro camera, things of that nature. Now, this is not the injection molded version, so this is a 3D printed version. So the bottom is 3D printed copper, the top is plastic or PLA. Now, how I got started with the company was actually, he came to me with the idea and said, hey, David, I'm thinking about doing this. I would love your help. I looked at him, I was like, I'll be honest, Dave, I really don't know what you need me for, but let me know when you figure it out or what you want me for. He was like, okay, cool. And about a month later, he was like, all right, man, I'm entering this business plan competition at Drexel. Really need your help. So that's what we like collaborated on. did the business plan competition and ended up winning that, which was like a $10,000 grant from Drexel and some space upstairs and the incubator for like students and student-run businesses, all that jazz. So essentially, the idea has continued to evolve from that. And I'm going to pull out my phone because that's just the nature of stuff this day. And I got to remember kind of the talking points that I wanted to go through. But sorry about that. So after joining the team, we decided, or it was really just two of us, we decided to run a Kickstarter campaign. Is anyone not familiar with Kickstarter? Cool. All right. See, this is our generation, isn't it? Market understanding. But we decided to run a Kickstarter campaign. And what that taught me in the context of business is that you really have to diversify your skill sets. Now, you can specialize in things, which is a really great thing to do, particularly specializing in engineering or a certain field of engineering, whether that be electrical, mechanical, civil, things of that nature. But understanding everything else is, trust me, like a very good platform to stand on. One thing I've learned about entrepreneurship in general, throughout the course of Drexel, I probably failed 4 companies, right? And only one of them was like moderately successful, and now we're on SPOR. But the rule that I learned from that is you got to learn what you don't know, and you got to learn that shit fast. Sorry, you got to learn that stuff fast, right? Because like that helps to develop your competencies, that helps to understand who you need on your team, how to supplement those skills. One big issue you run into with entrepreneurship is not only other people's egos, but your own ego. And you got to learn how to like see through that very quickly and understand that it's going to take a lot more than just what you think you can do, and challenging yourself to like, learn more things of that nature. So I had to learn what I didn't know very fast. Now, how that plays into Kickstarter, I didn't know how to market a freaking Kickstarter, right? At all. It took a lot of research. It took a lot of planning, which is one thing I think a lot of people miss out on. And in terms of planning, the planning that took was actually really related to reaching out to press, understanding how to communicate with Drexel University to help scale up our message, designing graphic content for all the people we were reaching out to via email or via print or hosting events to kind of get our name out there. So we tried to launch a Kickstarter to raise $100,000. We ended up raising $112,000 through an array of partners. I don't know if you all just see the video or not. Okay, all right, I'll show the video. But a Kickstarter is a lot more than the video. Just like a business is a lot more than a product or a lot more than an idea. The other day I was talking to some people and they were like, oh man, like there are 3 components to a business. I don't really agree with this, but I kind of agree with the sentiment. There's your team, the idea, and the market. Can anyone guess like what the priorities of those are? In terms of importance, which comes first? Team, priority, market. Team, market, and idea. Team. What comes second? Market. What comes third? Okay, well, last 2 trip people up, but it was their understanding that it was team, then market, then idea. So the team part, everyone kind of aligns with, right? Like you got to have the right people on the boat, regardless of what they're doing. Then it's the market. Or at least this is what their assumption was, because if there's not a market for an idea, and this is where it gets kind of confusing, there's really no point in doing it. But ideas change. That was the thing, right? more so and more rapidly than markets might change. But ideas change, they formulate. So I'm going to talk you all through the initial idea for SPOR and then how that's changed and where we've come to this day.
Introducing a product so revolutionary, so powerful. It's unlike anything you've ever seen.
Well, this is SPOR. SPOR is a USB battery charger that passively recharges itself from the sun. It's portable electricity. We took 4 simple components, put them together in one solid product, so you never have to go without power for your mobile devices ever again. This is our way of putting the power of the sun in your pocket. Trying to make energy more accessible, more affordable, and spread power across the world. Here's how. Inside each spore is a 5,200 milliamp hour lithium-ion battery.
That's huge. That's like 3.5 full iPhone chargers.
On top of that, we have a 0.5 watt monocrystalline solar panel that'll keep the battery charged.
So you can charge it by the sun or by indoor lighting.
And at 1 amp, it might not be as quick as a wall outlet, but you can hook them up in parallel with other units, creating a larger system. We call it daisy chaining.
It has 2 inputs, so you can charge it by the outlet or by your computer, and 2 outputs, so you can charge 2 devices at once, like an iPhone or a Samsung.
Or your iPad and your Nexus.
Like your Bluetooth headset, or your GoPro.
Or your Arduino and your Arduino projects.
Or your beeper.
You're still using beepers?
I'm bringing beepers back.
For all you makers out there, we designed SPOR Shell to be 3D printable, which is simple, customizable. You can make out of almost any material that you want. Design it yourself. Why not?
And why not make it simple? So we're going to be upfront and honest about the components we put inside your product.
This product should be open and understandable. We intend to carry this throughout our entire product ecosystem.
An ecosystem of spores, solar panels, and cables that all work together seamlessly. We've designed SPOR so that it can daisy chain. One spore can be connected with another, and another, ultimately increasing the capacity of the system and your ability to harness that power. We're also designing larger solar panels that can be connected directly with your device, or you can plug daisy chain spores into it, creating a small-scale solar energy grid, which we think is kind of cool. And all of this is connected with our fabric cables, which add a little funk to your charge, and our gooseneck cables, which you can adapt your charge. Our cables can be shaped the way you want to give you the flexibility that you deserve. We've also designed them with a unique USB latching feature, so you don't have to worry about it falling off your bike or when you do other crazy awesome stuff.
Building a SPOR is simple. We start with easy-to-source batteries and solar panels, and our team of engineers has designed a circuit board that's not just efficient, but it's easy to assemble. What this means is SPOR can be built anywhere where there are components. So if we can get components there, we can get power there. SPOR is an adaptable and scalable system. That's exactly what the world needs. When we first created SPOR, we just wanted something to help us charge our phones. But we quickly realized it could be a lot more than that.
We realized that in the US, sometimes you just don't want to be stuck to an outlet. Whereas in other parts of the world, sometimes people don't even have an outlet to be stuck to. But one thing we all have is the sun. And now we have a way to harness it. With SPOR, we're challenging the way we generate some of the world's energy.
And challenging the way that we design and build products. And that's why we're reaching out to Kickstarter's community. Because it's filled with people that want to create something new and change the world.
But to be honest, we can't do it alone. And that's why we're reaching out to you. Because we need your help to back our project and support our vision of making clean energy a little more accessible and a little more portable and a little more affordable for everyone.
So please, Kickstarter, help us spread the power.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that was our Kickstarter. A really kind of raging time throughout the 35 days. We were here in Philly trying to support it through grassroots stuff where we were running around the city in costumes that look like outlets to say, hey, don't be connected to the outlet, to a trip to Vegas. Ended up raising the $112,000. We got a LinkedIn message, ironically, from one of a Drexel alum, and he was like, hey guys, don't go to any accelerators before you talk to me. We were like, all right, who is this guy? Ended up having to be our first major investor. He dropped $200,000 in our business to really help us build the product and the actual business. So that put us $300,000 after Kickstarter fees and stuff like that. But just to say, this idea started as some Arduino project for your blinds. Then it transformed to a charger. Then it transformed to an ecosystem of products. Then it transformed to an actual business, and that's where we are now. So in that, it's the ideas that you have initially, those will change. There can be a set path in life, right? It's probably good to have it. It's probably good to have a direction or a flow, but all that stuff comes down to being able to adapt and being able to change that. It's not going to be set in stone. The things we think we're going to be committed to the rest of our lives or that we're 100% going to do, that may not always be the case. And that's when it goes back to the conversation about ego. We really have to understand that it's not what we originally think, because what you create out of your mind is really based off the data that you have, right? The information that you have access to, past experiences. But as your experience set grows, so too does your potential, so too do the opportunities and your ability to adapt and maneuver through things. And that's what we learned after the Kickstarter when we took this trip to China. So launched the Kickstarter. We're like, all right, let's go source these components for this product because we want to build something that's adaptable and we want to build it. We want to create things, right? So flew to Hong Kong, and then we took this long freaking like car ride to Shenzhen. And I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with Shenzhen, but it's the electronics capital of the world. So 80 to 90% of the electronics products, probably your phones were probably made in Shenzhen, a lot of these different things. And what they have are these things called electronics malls. And I'm talking about you walk into this place right here would be filled with like 50 little kiosks or little like corners, and it's just like tiny little resistors in some place, USB panels in some place, or they're like knockoff Dre headphones and stuff like that. But the packaging is actually like surprisingly good. Like if you go to this place, like you'll be like, oh man, those are Dre Beats, and then you pick it up and it's like, oh man, those are not Dre Beats, but the box looks good. So you go to this place and you have all these electronics components, things of that nature, and that's when you learn like what you thought was your product roadmap just expanded infinite, right? Because they have things from chargers that are also lighters, that are also LED lights, or they've got LED lights that you control off the wall or with your phone, things of that nature. Stuff that you may have seen here, but most likely it's a lot of stuff that you haven't seen here. So we embedded some of those things into our product roadmap, and really kind of explored China as well. So another thing in terms of like going through your career, and trust me, I'm not a professional or anything like that, I'm just speaking from experience, exposure is definitely key, right? The fact that we went to China, or that we did a Kickstarter, or that we just engaged in new ideas or opportunities or met new people, like that's valuable because it starts to build out your own story, but also your own base of confidence. So I would just be careful with the food though. Like that, I found myself throwing up like a lot. So just small anecdote. Actually, a lot of the food was really good. But one thing you'll notice, or there specifically, went to like a few different restaurants, and you know, if you're in a different place, you should try the food, right? We had cow stomach or tripe, right? That kind of like threw me for a loop, but it was all right, a little like tangy. Mark and Jason, they were the men. Like when it came to that, like they're just like, you know, I'm just like, no, I want to try. And then like chicken feet, and like Jay looked at me while I was trying, and he was like, "What's wrong, dude? You just got like cow guts in your mouth." And that's when I was like, "Oh man!" And I just had to like run and throw up. But like it wasn't that bad. It was just like a psychological thing. But then like cow udder or penis or whatever it was, ironically, was actually like tasty. So, I mean, I don't know how many guys say, "Oh, like, oh man, I had penis." Good, but like, in that aspect, like that was like kind of good food. But regardless, you scratch that one. But like that's a story, right? That's something that people can laugh about, something that people can engage in, and you guys are going to continue to create like all these different unique stories, which is really freaking awesome, to be honest with you. So anyway, in China, a lot of great things happened there. Understood and learned really quickly what we didn't know about building a product and about like the components that should go into it, such as it's not going to be a product made in China. It's going to be a product made on planet Earth. So we get our solar panels from China and our USB cables from China, but we get some of our 3D printed shells from our 3D printer in West Philly and also 3D printers in Sweden. We get our batteries from North Dakota. We get our circuit boards from San Francisco, right? So all these different components that come together and we assemble them. Not everything was like made not everything was made in China. So it's really a kind of global product. And the mission behind it is really one of empowerment, right? So just like Jay said, if you can get components there, you can get power there. So the fact that this is like very modular, I mean, you got solar panel, like the shell that we printed, batteries, like the circuit board, and the bottom shell. Like, imagine just sending a battery, a circuit board, and a solar panel to a country in sub-Saharan Africa or like Southern India or any place in the developing world and sending them 3D printers, like a module as big as this table that says, hey, like we're giving you components and the ability to create this energy or harness this energy. Like that's really the mission, right? To empower people to have access to energy anytime they can, because it's something that everyone needs. It's something that almost everyone wants. And in that context, it's really about revolutionizing the way that people can access that. So who likes Tom shoes? Cool. Who doesn't like Tom shoes? All right, cool. Good. No one. All right. So one thing we found about the Tom shoes model is that you buy one, you give one, right? So I buy a pair of Tom shoes and then another pair of Tom shoes get sent somewhere to someone who needs it. Like how sustainable is that? I don't know. It might be very sustainable, right? But our thought behind it is, if you buy a SPOR, like a portion of that money gets delivered in terms of credits of energy, not donating a product per se, but donating like actual energy, the ability to have one of these modules or have the capability to, in your local community, build this for yourself and distribute that. So fostering like local economic well-being, things of that nature. Obviously, it takes an understanding of the market dynamics at play, right? Because you don't just go into every single country and say, here's a module, here's a module, here's a module, but you go into that country and say, what are your needs, right? Like how can we assess these needs? What products fit that need? And then how do we distribute it? Or how do we monetize it type of thing? So in our case, and I think in a very personal case too, understanding the future requires understanding the space you're trying to go into and then trying to get as much data and information as possible before you make the move.
I think that leads me to my next point.
No, it doesn't. So also in terms of the strategy that we're crafting into this brand, beyond empowerment is also showing people that they can create, right? So a 3D printed SPOR is a 3D printed SPOR, and that gives all types of customization types of capabilities, but also open source, right? I love patents, but I don't love patents. But I love patents and I don't love patents because there are certain like trip ups with that, right? You know what? I think I like patents, but I don't like how certain corporations have leveraged in terms of blocks of drugs that have come out that may potentially be able to cure something, but you can't monetize off of that, so you shelve it, sorry. In terms of us, we're not a company where you can patent this because it's an architectural innovation, just similar components that have been put together in a different way. So we invite our consumers to change it up if they want to. In terms of open source, it's, hey, if you want to design a SPOR with 3 USB ports, you design that. You put it up on our platform, and we can make it if you want us to make it, or you can make it if you want to make it. But all about collaborating with our consumers and giving them the opportunity to create new product lines or extensions or accessories and things of that nature. So in terms of where we're at right now, we are coming up on our first delivery, which will be in March. Supposed to throw a big banger actually in this room for a launch party, and then the after party because some people are too young, but no, it's fine. So launch party coming up on the first delivery, identifying small retailers around Philadelphia to tap into. It's really a grassroots type of brand. If I'm boring anyone, I really prefer you to like raise your hand and be like, yo, you were boring the crap out of me. Please make this more engaging. So, yeah, so that's where we are, like moving. I mean, there's 4 people on the team now. We found our chief technology officer off of Reddit, ironically. Mark is the man. He's over our marketing and really handles our social media. I'm over strategy in terms of if we decide we're going to do something, what's the best way to do it, and then get the infrastructure there. Jay's the visionary, product visionary, and really company visionary. But I kind of want to go back to the point about like learning different competencies. When you step into a business or when you step into an idea, you really don't know like, the scope of it, right? Does anyone wants a company? Can you tell us about it a little bit?
Yeah, I used to make longboards.
Okay.
I had a big, maybe a couple hundred of them. Yeah. A couple years ago.
Okay. You said 3 years ago?
A couple years ago.
Oh, a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Did a lot of stuff change? Did you have to learn a lot? Okay. Such as?
Everything.
Oh, okay.
It's, yeah, I mean, you're totally right. When you first start, I mean, you have no idea what's gonna happen and what.
Cool. So understood. Starting a company, starting school, starting a family, even though I haven't started that, like relationships come with all types of things that we don't know. And that's one of the points I was trying to make about learn what you don't know and learn it fast, because you seek to make a product for a business. We had to learn very quickly that we didn't know everything about legal. So then you have to find the resources to either hire someone to do your legal work, or you gotta like research it yourself. We didn't know everything about financing because school only teaches you so much in terms of applicability, right? Like it'll go like, oh, these are the things that you're gonna learn, but most of the time, like when you get into that job, that's when they teach you the things that you need to know. So I love school. Don't get me wrong. I'm not bashing school at all. The thing is, legal, financing, equity, like capital raises, like VC terms, like Shark Tank is just the cream, like the tip of the iceberg. There are a lot of things to learn, but you can't get stifled by that because that's, I mean, if you really believe in what you're doing or trying to create, then there's no reason to get stifled by things that other people have done in the past. There are a lot of resources to really kind of access. So I'm going to go into the esoteric David mode in terms of entrepreneurship and some things that I've learned along the way. But first, I want to open it up for any questions related to SPOR or anything like that.
I have a general timeline question. Like, you were gonna launch your products in March and stuff, but before you even got to Kickstart, what was the time frame before that? What major events had to happen?
Yeah. So in terms of timeline, I'll start from the position where Jay and I started talking. 2 months was Jay and I started talking. There was a month where we submitted a business plan. Then there was another month where we actually competed in the business plan competition. It was the finals. We won that. So that span took 2 months. Then it was wow, 5, 6, 7. So 7 months of development, like product development. Then we launched the Kickstarter. 3 weeks before the Kickstarter when we really started tapping into our press networks. So that was March. Then that was March of last year, June. Then we graduated, and then we went to China in September. And around that time, we rose the extra $200,000. And then we came back. It was more product development, more building out the brand, and more building out the product. And in December is when we started really ordering components, from the USB cables to the solar panels to the batteries. And now it's February. So yeah, coming up on, wow, it is a year. Yeah, coming up on a year. Yeah. That was weird.
When can I buy one?
So you can actually buy one now, but it's still in pre-orders. But the moment we launch in March, like the day after the launch party, you can buy one and it'll be shipped to you.
So one thing that I thought was really interesting is you went from just the charging stations to now you're saying you want customers to create different product lines. So from the business standpoint, how is that sustainable to your growth besides everyone being able to create their sport charger?
So in terms of, I'll take that from 2 angles, sustainability and monetization. In terms of sustainability, it's because people are constantly updating our platform with new products, which enables new revenue streams, right? I guess I just answered both of those, but new revenue streams in terms of products, in terms of applications, accessories, whether that be USB powered lights or USB powered fan or USB powered necessities from heating your stove to cooking, things of that nature. The sustainability piece really comes into the top designers, I think. So if a person comes and they upload a brilliant product idea, I'm like, oh man, that was awesome. We would love to have you come to our headquarters and tell us more of your ideas. That person potentially becomes an employee, and having that human capital on our team is the value of that is probably incalculable. So.
But if you allow them to differentiate your product, make their own product, then how are you?
Yep. So good point. The aspect or the reason behind that is not to control someone or isolate them. Like they very well could like go make it themselves. But the thought behind it is we just provided you the tools to do that. Some of the design software to that. So to do that. So if you want to make it, you could go do it by yourself, but partnering with us, we already have the distribution channels for that product. We can provide royalties on the product to you if you want to continue to like work with us or upload designs and things of that nature. But it's really about that brand engagement. And so many times we downplay the value of a brand, right? If you look at Coca-Cola's balance sheet, and I looked at this maybe 3-4 years ago, they had a line in there that was goodwill, and it was $2 million, which is basically just fluff for saying this is our brand. Like our brand is worth like $2 million. And I don't know how that valuation comes, but there's a lot to say about a brand who connects with the person. It's like, you know what, I trust this brand. I'm going to continue to work with this and continue to work with them to create a product. So it's really about like, hey, I see you see me, like let's make a product together because you might not have the resources to really scale it from our side.
From like a competitive advantage standpoint, because I know there are like a lot of companies, there's like a lot of young entrepreneurs coming out like solar energy powered, products. Like at the Forbes 30 Under 30 conference, there's like a girl who was creating like a ball that was like kids in Africa could play with, and it would like become, powered, and they could plug in like any cord to it, and it would charge their phone or whatever. So like, are you guys working on partnerships, and like, how are you guys going to deal with like kind of like those competitors that are coming about?
Yeah. So the landscape is very fragmented and inundated with so many different companies, from Mophie, which is your expensive charger, to Goal Zero, to D-Light in developing countries, to your small chargers that give you 15 minutes of extra charge time, but will break in 5 days. So in terms of managing the competitive landscape, it's product differentiation, brand, and also engagement. So product differentiation in terms of, like, this is a customizable product. No other like charger has that capability right now or really offers that. Also, in terms of the specs, right? Like it's a lower price point for a lot more punch, a bigger battery, but you can only compete on price for so long. That's when you get into like commoditized type things. So that's a differentiator that's going to lower or decrease in value over time. And in terms of engagement, absolutely, partnerships. So organizing ourselves with empowerment companies that we find, such as 3D printed companies that print 3D printed prosthetics in the shape or in superhero characters like Iron Man type things, and supporting those organizations and also like collaborating with them to market. It's really about understanding our brand value proposition and vision, and aligning ourselves with organizations and people to carve out our niche in the market, and be able to market those through certain channels. So to get a little more technical, beyond the kind of hierarchical vision of differentiation, it comes down to what marketing channels are you using, and our mantra is like the more targeted you get, the more valuable you get. So if you don't want to just target, like you don't want to just put a billboard up, or you don't want to just say grassroots marketing or digital marketing. It is, well, what's your name?
Sam.
Last name. Sam Smith goes to like grab food at this place early in the day. So you know what, Sam Smith, you might want a sport charger, right? You might. I'm not sure right now because I don't know what you want, but we can give you a product that you need. But it's just about getting more targeted. And that was probably a really bad example, but that's along the lines.
All right. So I don't know. I'm probably aware that there's similar products like back in 2009 and 2008.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know them. Back in China, you can probably get them under $20 and it's going to work, I guess the problem is they didn't took off because the solar panel is not, that powerful. It takes hours and hours to charge your phone. A lot of companies is cornered by the technologies. I don't know how long does it take for you guys to charge your phone, and what's your price right now? And that's one.
Okay, price is $50, and you're right, because when we were in China, we actually bought a lot of them from $5, $20. A lot of them broke. Some of them didn't. Like some of them still work to this day, whether they were solar or non-solar. I'm trying to remember everything else you said. Oh, the technology. So this is a 0.5 monocrystalline panel. You're right. It doesn't collect to really just like juice your phone or to have a lot. You would need a huge solar panel, right? And that's why it's really about this storage piece. So this solar panel is leveraged as like passively recharging. So you don't always need to have this out in the sun, but if you have it in the sun or you have it under artificial light, it'll continue to top your battery up. So we'll ship it out with 80 to 90% full charge. And you continue, keep it on the side of your backpack or whatever it is, but it's not dependent on this. You can charge the SPOR from the outlet, or you can charge it from the wall, or you can charge it from artificial light. The light piece and the solar piece is a passive type of piece. Now, what else was in it? I'm sorry.
How long?
Oh, so how long to charge? So what Jay mentioned in there, he said it charged at 1 amp. So now the SPOR is rated to charge at 2.1 amps, which is literally the same amount as the wall outlet. So it'll charge your phone as fast as if you plug it into an outlet.
Okay, so my understanding is you basically combine the solar panel charger with the battery charger.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. I guess I could have said it simply like that. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out because I bet everybody has a battery charger nowadays.
Mhm.
Yeah, and solar panels just not.
Right.
How long? Oh. How long is the storage capability?
So, wait, I'm sorry.
Without the light.
Without the light? Oh, so the battery will charge your phone 3.5 times over. So it's a 5,200 milliamp hour battery, depending on the phone. Like we rate it for in terms of iPhones, but that'll charge an iPhone 3.5 times over. If you got Android, it's more like 2.75 times over.
Oh yeah. Is everything open source? Like it's all?
Yeah. For the most part, I mean, when we launch, we'll be launching with a new website that has an actual platform for that, and that platform we're looking at making it proprietary. In terms, that's weird, right? You have proprietary software for open source, but anyway, yeah, everything will be open source. Yeah.
So I'm an industrial engineer. I'm curious about like how do you assemble these parts?
Yeah.
And shipping to you? Like, do you hire people to assemble it and pack it?
No, we do it.
How many people do you have as your employee and as of now?
So four like founders, and that's we got 2,000 units to assemble and ship. So it's going to be taxing, and so far it has been, and that's just off of like these small unit runs and stuff like that. But it's us, and when the time comes, honestly, we're going to be calling in a lot of favors in terms of friends. But we work with some contract manufacturers to be able to do that and just kind of pay them, but we prefer.
I would say it's probably better, if you assemble it and at one place, for example, China,
Mm-hmm.
and actually cut probably half of the time.
Right. No, absolutely. And that was a big part of the conversations that we had going on. And when we decided against it for the fact that one, if you manufacture in China, there's going to be your unit on this line, and then there's going to be your unit on this line, but they're going to be selling it at a completely reduced cost. So one of the ways to protect ourselves is to, you know what, we're not ordering a product from you, we're just ordering, or a full product from you, we're just ordering a solar panel from this supplier, and we're just ordering batteries from this, and we'll assemble it to protect ourselves in terms of copying, but also the assembly piece for us. Now, this gets into different product lines. For the injection molded version, most likely we will be like contract manufacturing that and having someone assemble that entire unit. For the 3D printed one, that's more of a premium product. Like if you want your stuff 3D printed in copper or you want it 3D printed in wood, like we'll assemble that because at that point it's handcrafted and you pay for the customization. But cutting costs on the injection molded version, yes, we align. We are right there. In terms of the 3D printed version, it's really about like the customization and not worried about cutting costs on that, but more so making a quality product.
If you do open source, why are you still afraid of being copied?
So that's a really good question, and honestly, Personally, we aren't, but our investors are. And when you start taking on investors, you have to manage their expectations, unless they completely align with everything you do, which they never will, right? So, like, hey guys, like, I just put 200 grand in your company. Don't get copied. Okay, so yeah, I mean, or we won't have the money like next round. So that's really.
So what's been your biggest challenge so far, like either manufacturing or like assembly? I know you guys have like gotten funded pretty well, like, especially with the investor giving you $20,000 each year. But like, what has been like the biggest obstacle you guys have like jumped over so far?
I was about to let my esoteric mind take that and say egos, but the biggest challenge that we faced is actually a technical problem, and that is the actual sourcing of suppliers. So we went out to China expecting that we were going to get all of our components from there. We left getting solar panels and USB cables. We ordered solar panels. We ordered some USB cables, only to find out that the USB cables didn't work. So Jay had to fly back out to China and go meet with other suppliers. That's another, what, $4 grand out of, like, to take that trip and to communicate with suppliers and finalize something or realize what wasn't going to work. And then from, okay, well, we realized we weren't going to get all our components from here, so where are we getting our components? And you can't just design a product, you have to design it for manufacturing. So like doing that, it's a completely different perspective in terms of how you produce something or how you build it and then replicate. So it's really like the production is like the biggest challenge in terms of like sourcing.
So just like you mentioned, you had like an unexpected, like you had to go to China and you weren't expecting for that. When that kind of thing happens, how do you, I guess I'm gonna ask this in the wrong order. How do you like get your big number of what you're asking for, like on Kickstarter? You asked for $100,000. How do you like come up with that big number, but then also keep to that when you have unexpected trips and things?
Yeah, really good question. We came up with that number because one, we thought it was like what would actually get us the product developed, right? But two, because we thought that was a brandable and marketable number. Like, oh, we raised $80,000 on Kickstarter, or did you raise? Oh, we raised $100,000 on Kickstarter. That's the number that like investors can align with more. But also, like $100,000 is the difference between 6 meetings with an investor and what we had a phone call. Hey, this is what we're doing. Yo, here's 200 grand, right? It doesn't always happen like that, but like that's some of the thought that went into that number. Now, how you deal with unrelated expenses? Honestly, like we were bootstrapping most of the way there. So like even though we had to take that unexpected expense, we still had room to go because we were bootstrapping, nitty gritty, trying to do everything else. But in terms of like planning though, everything, like don't be naive. Just don't be naive. Like things are going to take a lot longer than you expected, and they're going to cost a lot more than you expected. Like we thought our Kickstarter units were going to cost $30 a unit, and we sold them for $50. Can anyone guess how much they cost? Like as we're delivering, can anyone guess how much they actually cost? $50. Like that's breaking even, right, on the chart. It costs $50 because we're doing these like low unit quantities or 2,000, but when you get up to 5,000 or 10,000, the cost decreases. But like things take a lot longer and they cost a lot more than you expect. If no more questions on that front, I'm going to go into esoteric, David. Okay, cool. So just in terms of entrepreneurship in general, one of the things that, who thinks it's risky to like graduate college and not like go for a job or to just try to start your own thing? Who thinks that's risky? Oh, okay. Oh, okay, all right. One thing I've learned, like the biggest risk is to not take one at all. We are emerging in a generation that has to have a higher risk tolerance than the ones previous. Like I had a conversation with one of my friends the other day talking about just like parents, right? I don't know if this is you all situation, but my dad was like, all right, you graduated college, go to grad school, man, go to grad school. I was like, I'm not going to grad school right now. Like I'm trying to start sport. Or why can't you do both? But you need to go to grad school. And he's just like, you just got to better your odds, better your chances in life. And the sentiment on my end was, well, I'm trying to expose myself to some different things. Like if I want to go to grad school later, I'm going to parlay my startup experience into that, like as a differentiator or something. But I felt like that was his generation, right? Like low risk. You get a job and you continue to do that. And not saying that getting a job is bad, but it's just like, where is the room for expansion and growth, not only like of your own self, but in terms of like career prospects. So the biggest risk is to not take one at all. So like I jumped out there with Jay. We both were like, you know what? Let's do this startup thing and let's just run with it. Because if there's any inkling in your mind that you shouldn't, well, it's probably good if you have that inkling to kind of ground you, but like go for it. Like go for it. If you want a job, like go for it. If you want a startup, go for it. Just take that leap sometimes, because you never know what that'll lead to in terms of your own like personal development, but also like professional development, right? And then honestly, like this is what people look for, I think, in the long term. If you're going to like some of these corporations, they want like experience that is out of the quote unquote norm. They want something where you've actually like put your like strapped up your boots and tried to jump into something. So if anyone's considering starting a business or launching a startup, I would say like go for it. Like throw yourself in it for a little bit and don't think too much. Understand the variables at play, but don't think too much, and still feel free to. I would like people to combat me on some of these too, if you're not agreeing or you're not aligning, because we could all learn something from not just me talking to you, but us having a conversation.
I'm not really gonna come back on it, but so you went from, I mean, like, so for those, like, we had mentioned a little bit about like the co-op program. It's very like you come in as a freshman and you start interviewing like 6 months into school. So you don't really have any experience, and sort of right away they're pushing job. So like David had 3 really successful co-ops, and he was in like essentially a corporation. So like going from that mentality to a startup, like what made that switch for you? Because a lot of times, I know some people that sort of surround ourselves, like Rina's another example, like we worked together at SAP, and that's a huge corporation, and now Rina's running with Ahana, and David like stopped doing like the corporate climb. So like what differentiates you, and like where do you make that switch? Because here we're taught to go for the job, and how do you kind of enable that more?
Gotcha. What enabled me or what kind of pushed me towards that was balance. I don't think corporations have a lot of balance. I think they're very too structured, like hyper-structured, very bureaucratic, a lot of red tape, and things move very slow. In startup world, I also think like there's no balance. I think you're too like unfocused, too like naive, spread out everywhere. So where I would like to be is in the middle of that, a perfect blend of like the startup mentality, forward thinking, the word everyone wants to use now, passion, but also a blend of like that structure and that strategy. But that's what forced me, or not forced me, but inspired me to kind of go towards a startup, because at least in the startup role, I had the ability or the authority to start shifting to more structure and strategy. But I didn't want to go from box to like, from being boxed in to trying to unbox myself. I was like, all right, let me step out and go into like fragmented La La Land to like let's add some structure. But that's kind of what led to it. But you said you're taught to go for the job, right? So that's a difficult question to answer in terms of engineering specifically, I think. Yeah, because where are you getting your field or where are you getting your experience from? The job, right? Like the school isn't going to teach you everything that you need to know. So in some sense, it's probably best to like at least co-op or at least intern or try to get into a job. But I think the thing is, when you get into it, you get typecast and you get stuck into a certain modality. It's kind of like you got to be Leo DiCaprio. You can't be like Keenan from Keenan and Kel. You just like stay stuck in like comedy stuff. You got to be Leo to do comedy and all these different things. But the way he did that was like put himself in a platform, movies, and like diversified his experience. So how you do that is put yourself on a platform, a job, but continue to network, continue to like interact with the startup culture, continue to do all these other things that are separate outside of your job while you're still learning like talents and skills on like the company's dime. That's the cynical part of me, but like while you're still learning and getting paid for it. And really, if they're telling you like go for the job, go for the new type of job. Right? There are plenty of engineering positions in the startup world that actually pay because they've got like investor backing or VC backing, blah 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 blah. I would explore some of those because it's going to give you a chance to develop and hone your skills, whether they be industrial or civil or mechanical or electrical. All these things are going to give you a chance to develop that, but they're also going to show you and give you transparency to all other parts of the organization. Things that Johnson & Johnson and things that the Haverford Trust Company don't do. They don't give you transparency to all those other places. So I would say, if they're saying go for the job, look into some like startups, or at least like recently new companies. 10 left or, okay.
I'm just like going off what both of you guys said and going off what Sarah said with like going for the job. Like I know, like I was talking to my sister because that's something I struggled with. Like taking like the conventional route, like taking the unconventional route. And I was talking to my sister about it, and she was kind of like, Rina, like stop thinking that there's like a normal way of doing things. There is no normal, and I think like we're just so ingrained, especially going to Drexel. Like, all right, there's like 3 call-ups, you get a job, and you're set. Like, it's just like you need to stop thinking that there is like a path that you're supposed to go on, and that there's something that's like that there's like a normal way of doing things, because nobody here is normal by any means. So like there is really no normal thing. It's just kind of something we've like made up in our heads. And so it's just like, I don't know, it's just kind of like going off of like what you guys said. Like I think we just like, especially with like our parents are very low risk and that kind of thing. It's just like our generation is not normal. Like there's nothing normal about it. So stop thinking that there's a normal path to take,
I agree. And I'm not trying to advocate for a job. I'm not trying to advocate against a job or advocate for startups against startups. I guess the central purpose is to just grow in whatever you're doing. So you can, at one point, stand on like your own two and do what you want to do and how you want to do it. A few more points since I'm kind of closing up. You all said a lot of people raised their hand in terms of coming out of college and going to a startup, like very risky. I think we put fear on a pedestal. Right, like that's something we put like up here, and we're like, oh, hey, Fear, how you doing? I'm just gonna walk away from you. But like, you stop. Like we got to stop putting fear on a pedestal. And I'm not saying everyone does this, but that needs to like stop happening. Because fear, I think, and this is where I'm probably gonna get some challenge here because my roommate got to challenge me on it. But it's a function of exposure, right? Or if I'm afraid of something, it means I obviously haven't interacted with the concept of that or the reality of that enough times to know that I probably shouldn't be afraid of it. Probably shouldn't be afraid of like stepping out and doing a startup. Or I shouldn't be afraid of a job or having a conversation with like parents or things of that nature. Like fear is just up on this little pedestal that we create in our own psychologies that if we understood the root of it, we would probably get past it. And half the battles in life are very mental. It's fear is also like an uncertainty type thing, right? And the more certainty you have, like the less fear you have, like the more fear dissipates. So in terms of action items, I found that to mean for me, like learn as much as you can and then just take the jump, right? So if you look at most CEOs on like Forbes list, what did they study? They went to business school, right? Yeah, but after they like did their undergrad in engineering. Like most CEOs on like Forbes 500, they studied engineering and worked in the field, and then they went and to business school, and then they like worked up in the company or were positioned to be CEOs, but they got a very technical understanding, right? That minimizes the gap of fear. That minimizes what you're not able to do. So, if you're walking in some very technical skills, which everyone should kind of develop and hone, uncertainty continues to wane. That pedestal, that fear sitting on comes down. But at a certain point, you have to take that step to be certain in that. You're never going to be 100% certain on anything unless it's already happened, because that's hindsight bias. But the more you can gather the data about a market or what you want to do, like what field would you like? Electrical engineering. The more data you can gather on that, the more people that you can meet in that field. the more companies that you know, or the deeper you know those companies, so it's not harmful there. Getting into that industry becomes less fearful and more certain because you're already ingrained in it. You've taken the time to orient yourself in that information and around that information. Any questions? Okay. Oh, buzzword of this century and for our generation, passion, right? Like, yes, you should have a passion, right? But balance that with some practicality, some planning, and some execution. Because like, I might be passionate about like whistleblowing. I might suck at like blowing whistles up. Or I might be passionate about like tapping my foot, but I'm not gonna run my life like just tapping my foot. Like, so like passion without like planning is like nothing. So passion, practicality, and understanding how you can use that passion or leverage that passion and developing skills and then execution. Buzzwords, effective teams. I guess I don't really have to say too much on that, but that's like very important, right? Teams that, one of the best teams I've ever seen is this company that used to be upstairs called 215 Marketing. Garrett, John, and Ed, they do not care what they say to each other. Like they'll say it in a good way, but like if they think there's a fundamental business challenge or someone's thinking about something the wrong way, it's yo, dude, you're thinking about that in the wrong way. Hey, stop. Nope, I don't care. I don't align with that, blah, 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 blah. And they work. Like it just to me, I'm just like, oh my God, they just gel, right? You can't be afraid of being able to say stuff. And that's the quality of a good team. People that you don't feel afraid to like, say certain information to, whatever it might be. How am I doing on time? Okay, cool. And don't downplay small wins. That's the biggest thing. A lot of times you might not feel like you're progressing, but you're not always progressing in very tangible ways that you can see, but personally you may be progressing. Make sure you count your small wins. And favorite word of life is vibe. So anything you're doing, just be, right? Just let it be. Don't force too much unless it's learning. But like, just be and have a good life. Just enjoy and have fun. But I think that's it for me. Cool.
David, we have some stuff here before you leave. So we're gonna take about a 10-minute break. So feel free to go out, grab the last like bit of coffee and everything. We're gonna not really switch the room out, but we have to put some things down on the table. So if you could just like, take your trash with you just for like a few minutes. Kind of doing a real big switch. So I said we'd be covering like, a lot of different angles. So we went from the nonprofit, we went from startups, and it's funny, but we're gonna talk to corporation right now and just kind of like. My goal for this right now is think about what we've heard the last like 2 presentations about just going with it and diving in and going with that either whether you want to do something like a startup or whether you're still looking to go into corporate ladder, but like don't downplay one or the other because having that equal balance of like understanding of like where we're going in the next 2, 3, 4 years, whatever year you are in school, like everything he said, I know, like, I've talked to David a bunch, and, like, I take all his words to heart, but, like, I also keep thinking about a corporation, so, like, where do you mesh in between this? So, think about those things for a few minutes while we go, grab our last bit of coffee, and, meet the new people we still haven't met yet in the room, and then we'll come back and hear from Jen and Jen. Cool, that was awesome. Okay. Yeah, no, it was so great. No, I thought that was really, really great a lot, so, I mixed a little bit of fun. Yeah, mine. So with yeah.
I gotta wait till.
What are you trying to listen to?
So we have it. Yeah, I'm going to yeah, but I don't think all the speakers are gonna use the microphone.
Hello. Can you hear me, Ron? So after I forgot that was broadcasted.
That's all right. I'll trim it for the finalized version. You can cut out parts with the final version once it gets posted. I mean, obviously it's a lot.
Yesterday, right? Not the first one.
Yeah. It's really good. Yeah, so, in terms of right now, because it's finalized, but it works. Right, so you start putting off the units for I would be instructed to do the call, literally, like, yo, and they'll be like, "Yo, what are you doing?" And the whole, like, 30 minutes. Well, I want to know what's going on. Yo, great question.
Because I have
Oh, really? True.
hear about this? That was my van. So I'll keep small here so I can get the other one 2000. Yeah. Okay, so my dress. All right,
Hey guys.
Good morning.
Good morning. So Donna Hunsky is going to be our next speaker. She works in the reliability rapid response team under supply chain at Johnson & Johnson. I actually did my second co-op at J&J, and she's gonna go into talking a lot about supply chain and a lot of the opportunities that she has seen there.
Good morning. Can you hear me if I don't stand near the microphone? Usually I have a big mouth, so it's okay. But I will stay close because I have to advance the slides. But no, it's great to see you all. I'm glad it's nice and warm in here because it is really frigid outside. And I know you've got some events for today planned, so I hope you stay warm and enjoy the snow. I was a Drexel student many years ago, graduated in 1986, and did my co-ops like you have done. Those of you who are here, those of you who are at other universities do co-ops as well. And I think it's really great that you have an organization like this to talk about what career opportunities that you have ahead of you, because there are many, and the choice is yours. The choice is not up to us as companies. The choice is yours to come and work for us, and you have to remember that and play your cards very well. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about J&J and about the organization of Johnson & Johnson, and then I'm going to take that and transition that over into supply chain careers. I have chosen a supply chain career. I have spent almost 30 years in the supply chain. I was actually a finance and marketing major. So most folks would go, wow, why would you go to the supply chain? It doesn't seem like it makes any sense. But it's all about what you learn when you get into the workplace, what you see and what opportunities are presented to you, and then you sculpt your career from there. So I want you all to think about and remember that just because you've studied something doesn't mean you're committed to that for the rest of your life. In fact, most of you will probably only work in it for the first 5 years of your career. And then you will probably move into other facets because you find them and you find them interesting. So don't turn down opportunities or don't think that something's not for you because you don't know until you try. So I was one of the children. I'm a child of an engineer and sister of multiple engineers. I'm the only non-engineer in my family. My first position was as a package engineer. It was my first title, the full-time title, and I've actually run a manufacturing organization for many years. So you never know where you're going to end up. So keep open to that. So I'll talk a little bit about Johnson & Johnson, and then we'll go into some supply chain fun stuff. I'm going to start off with a little bit of a video because you probably know Johnson & Johnson as a company. You've seen our advertisements, you've seen our products. Our job and our mission is that every day, maybe even every couple of hours in every day, you use one of our products. So when you got up, if you brushed your teeth, you may have used a Reach toothbrush or flossed with Listerine or Reach floss. You may have taken a prescription medication this morning. You may have washed your hair with Aveeno or put some hand cream on. I can probably walk you through the entire day, even getting you through to Tylenol PM to put you to sleep at night. Okay? That's our goal. Our goal is about you as consumers and you as our constituents in the world, making your life easier, better, and making it enjoyable for you. In some cases, we have to help to fix you. And in some cases, we just help to make you better, right? Okay. So I'm going to start with a video, and hopefully we will, everything will play. Give me 1 second, and I'll over here, so that's fine.
Love. It's the most powerful thing on the planet. Love is there to hold us in the beginning, there to comfort us as we grow old, and there for all the times in between. Love is family. Love is life. And for that love, you sacrifice it all. Love is the reason you care. For the tiny and the fragile, for the wise and irreplaceable, for all the things in your life that make life worth living.
Okay, so that's just it's an interesting approach to how we, as Johnson & Johnson, reach out to people. You didn't see many of our products in the advertisement, right? But you saw something that made you feel good, made you smile, made you think of happy times. That's the way Johnson & Johnson is drawing you in to its products and the effect that its products will have on your life. So think about that as a theme. We at J&J live by something that's called the Credo. The Credo was written over 75 years ago by General Johnson, who founded Johnson & Johnson. And he wrote that as a direction that he was attempting to provide for all industries. And he was asking that all industries recognize that if you first prioritize your customers and then prioritize your employees, the communities they live in, your stockholders will in the end benefit. So you will see us, and we have had many Harvard Business Reviews and other things done on the Credo and done on the ethics of J&J. But the Credo is very much alive. It's not only hanging on the wall in every one of our offices, in our personal offices as well as our buildings. It is something that comes up in meeting after meeting after meeting when we're making decisions about what we're launching into the marketplace or what the effects of something that's gone wrong with one of our products is about. We're most known for back in 1982 when Tylenol tampering occurred and 7 people died in the Chicago area. And the CEO of J&J at the time, his name was James Burke, stepped up and said, we take accountability. We're going to pull all of our product off the marketplace. And at that time, there was nothing like a tamper-evident or child-resistant package. And those were all developed within months after the tampering, because J&J recognized that it could no longer live in this world where we trusted each other to just buy our products and not return them and put something in them and things of that nature. So J&J has always been a company who has put the customer, or as we call it, the consumer first. So I'm going to talk through these 3 sections, or these 4 sections, I'll say, of the credo. Our first responsibility is to the people, is to those customers and consumers. We actually work in 3 different arenas with customers today. It's all about healthcare. We work in the consumer space, where we work with billions of customers and consumers around the world. The pharmaceutical space, which is a prescription. So you won't find any of those in the bags I've left you on the table. You're only going to find the consumer products there. And then we work in what's called medical devices and diagnostics. I'll show you some of those fun things. I hope you've never had to use them or see them, but if you're ever in surgery, the average is you've used 110 J&J products in any given surgery. Pretty scary, right? So I will go a little bit further here in the consumer space. Again, I talked with you about the fact that I think I can probably find my way into every hour of your day somehow. How many of you know J&J makes Splenda? Okay, so she's worked there. Splenda is a sweetener, right? And you kind of go, okay, prescription drugs and sweeteners, how does that work? It took 19 years to develop Splenda. 19 years of constant corporate investment in research and development and testing to develop Splenda. And the reason we developed Splenda is because one of the biggest disease states in the United States and soon to be in the world is diabetes. Okay, and diabetes is driven off of the use of insulin, right, or the misuse of insulin in your body. And one of the things that causes that is sweets or carbohydrates, right? So J&J says, rather than fix you when you're sick, I'd rather keep you healthy so that you don't get sick. And that's where Splenda was born. Okay, and Splenda is not an aspartame product like Sweet and Low. It is not an artificial product like many of the other packets that you see on the shelf. It's actually derived from sugarcane. So it's actually a more natural product. It is chlorinated, it is changed chemically so that it has a different calorie approach, right? But it is, again, it's geared toward preventing diabetes and obesity, the biggest disease states we have. So think about that from a consumer perspective and how many different ways we can touch the consumer. Here's some of the products you probably recognize. Most of these are either number 1 or number 2 in their marketplace. Everybody all right? Cool. I'll keep going. Medical devices. Today, you can have most of your body bones replaced by something else in order to make them function again. Hips, knees, fingers, facial joints, all kinds of things. And we also spend a lot of time in the prosthetics area, right? Replacement of a limb or of an articulating joint. Medical devices are all about surgeries and movable body parts. These are very critical. Today, we can reconstruct your entire face, all of the bones in your face. We have an entire division of J&J that actually works on that. Any kind of screws, hips, any kind of ball point or ball bearing joints that come together in your body, we probably make those as well. It's actually kind of weird to look at, I will tell you, every time I'm in one of the facilities where they're making them, and the thought that that is being stuck in your body and that reconstructs your knee kind of gives you the heebie-jeebies. But you really, it's amazing when you hear people who have hip replacement surgery and a day later they're walking out of the hospital with no pain and no rehab. So part of what J&J does is builds the tool, the actual medical device. And part of what J&J does is teach surgeons how to implant the tools and teach the recipient how to resume life. So it's not just about the actual knee or the suture that sews the incision together or the tool that actually is used in the insertion, but it's all about how do you go on living from there. So it's more than just the device itself. It's all of the life aspects around it. I'll show you a few pictures. I promise they're all good. That's a hip. When you see over there, does anybody wear contact lenses? Anybody wear AccuView contact lenses? Thank you. Made by our Vistacon organization down in Jacksonville, Florida. You see those over there. All right, and then pharmaceuticals. This is probably the largest growing division of J&J right now, launching new drugs or new pharmaceutical prescription drugs on a routine basis. You've seen some of the newer drugs. You'll see some pictures over there. Invokana, again, targeting the diabetes healthcare state. You see Remicade, you see Xarelto. There's a lot of different disease states that J&J is really addressing. You've heard a lot about Ebola and the fact that J&J just really just kind of turned on a dime, created a division, and we took the immunology and the infectious disease teams and went at the Ebola vaccination. Many of our competitors did the same thing, and we actually did it in concert with each other, which was very nice, which is why Ebola vaccinations are available and becoming available immediately. So we work in oncology, cancer treatments, infectious diseases and vaccinations, immunology, cardiovascular side, so the whole heart side of the business, and then the neuroscience and pain side of the business. Okay. Okay, that was our first responsibility, the first part of the credo. The second part is about you all as employees, as future employees. We are really about having full-time, full-length or life-length careers at J&J. J&J is one of those companies, we have 275 companies around the world. So you can work anywhere in the world and work for J&J. We have marketing, finance, sales, supply chain, IT. We have careers in all of those, or careers that actually mix between those different functions. So any major that you have taken in school, any career option that you want, we probably have a job like that in J&J somewhere in our world. All right. You are a priority as an employee. I know I'm a priority as an employee. I've been there for 30 years. I have had 3 children, raised them, and now they're now in college. And I have been able to work and continue to be a contributing member of the J&J leadership team for a long, long time, despite having all kinds of other life focuses. I've moved with the company multiple times and being able to move my family as well, and everyone was taken care of. So J&J is actually very, very in tune with what employees need today. So flexible work arrangements, as an example. I work out of 3 different facilities. One happens to be 10 miles from my home, one happens to be about 1,500 miles from my home, and one is about 50 miles from my home. My favorite place to work is my kitchen. And I do that pretty regularly because when I need to get things done and I'm only going to be on the telephone with people from other parts of the world, why do I need to drive to an office to do that, right? So I have my complete office setup, my laptop, my phone. I have a camera. I can talk to people and see them, everything from that perspective. So the flexible work arrangements are definitely a part of our design. Lots of experiences, we talked about that. And we talked about cross-business moves. Those 3 business models, the consumer, the pharmaceutical, and the medical device, our hope is that leaders will actually go through all of them because they are all the foundations of J&J. And if you want to lead J&J in the future, you need to understand all of them. We're going to talk about that concept too in the supply chain, because if you want to be a leader in the supply chain, you need to understand the entire supply chain end to end. And there are 4 key facets to the supply chain. So I'll describe those in a little bit. But you can see that this is really our strategy, is to be moving. I think the last presenter talked about pace and speed. J&J is a slow company. Okay, I'm not going to deny that it's a slow company because it's a big company. It's like turning the Titanic sometimes when you have to get things done. But with the right motivation, like the Ebola vaccination, you can get things done very quickly. But the beauty of the company is you have so many choices. You can work in so many different areas. You can go where you need to go or want to go from a locale or a regional perspective or from a career perspective. And you can try different careers on, and you don't have to stay forever. You can move around. So we'll keep talking about that. But that is one of the advantages of the big, slow corporation. All right. These words that are large here are very important to us. So if you are about human impact, if you like challenges, if you like broad responsibilities versus narrow responsibilities, these are the kinds of things that we build into careers. I'll pause there for a second. I'm moving pretty quickly through the credo. All right, so I want you to know as employees, I'll tell the story. And we were just joking about this, Shane and I. I'm wearing a jawbone and I'm walking around a lot because there are 450 of us in a competition right now, sponsored by the company. It's called Game On, because smoking is or sitting is the new smoking, right? Sitting for long periods of time is very unhealthy. What do you think we do at work all day? Sit, right? I can sit in the same conference room for 8 hours a day. So our leaders have said, okay, we got to get people moving. We got to figure this out. So they position this contest, and you have to sign up in teams of up to 10 people. The objective is to walk 10,000 steps a day. Your best 5 days of the week are measured. Company provided the jawbone. Company provides all the software. And the winning team at the end of the event, we each had to pay $100 to join, but the $100 comes back in terms of the winning team gets $45,000. And the second place team and the third place team, there's recognition all the way through. But the whole deal is to get us walking, right? So most of us were like, we were like, oh, this is never going to work. We're stuck in our meeting rooms. I will tell you that if you get into a J&J meeting today, you might find someone standing in the corner of the meeting room marching because they're not going to sit for an hour because we're competing for this money and we're competing for this recognition. And there's a spreadsheet comes out. Now, there's a woman who's leading this. She's the president of McNeil. McNeil is a company that's crazy busy. And every day we get a video from her iPhone encouraging us to get out and get our steps in, and whatever the day is, if it's Valentine's Day, she's like, don't eat too much chocolate, walk with your sweetheart instead of, eating chocolate, things like that. But it's because everyone in J&J is responsible to care about us as employees. And the lesson here is even the president of companies is personally chartering and personally overseeing things to make us better as employees. So it's not just about our training and our skill set, so how many different new training classes can we take, but it's about our health as well. So pretty interesting. So if I do pace a lot, that's why. I apologize. I'm up to 7,500 steps today. So we'll go. But my big surprise was I thought it was going to be impossible to get to 10,000 steps, and I usually crack 20 every day now. So it's pretty interesting. All right. Our third responsibility is to the communities in which we live. We feel it's very important that J&J gives back to the communities because, first of all, these are our people. These are our consumers who are in these communities. Second of all, we build large buildings and factories in these communities. We have to give back to the communities. We have to take care of the world we live in, just like we take care of the people we live in. So we give tremendous amounts of money in terms of contributions to organizations that are definitely healthcare focused. And these contributions are generally targeted by our employees. So this is not picked by the corporation. I, as an employee, can make a donation to an organization that I feel particularly passionate about, and the company will match my donation. And so they double my giving power. So that's where a lot of these donations come in. We also give away product, just as you see here. But we do give away product, especially when there's any kind of a natural disaster or there's an event in a region that we can help people out. We make first aid supplies, right? That's our business. So as soon as there's any kind of a natural disaster, we actually have inventory that we produce and sit and hold for those things. So gauze pads, Band-Aids, surgical sutures, first aid kits, things of that nature. We actually make them, hold them, don't sell it. We don't make it to sell. We actually make it to donate because that's our role in the communities. You see us work on clean energy, and you see us work on the sales, the delivered shareholder results. What we're talking about here is how we have translated the fact that our goodwill with the community actually works its way back into the top line of the company. And so we believe very much in the way the Credo positions things and says all of these things. If you take care of your customers, you take care of your employees, and you take care of your communities, your stockholders will benefit. So you see we have some greenest brands. I'm going to show you another video.
Going green. It's something you hear a lot about these days.
Natural,
Sustainable.
organic,
Earth-like,
water, responsible,
solar power, pure.
eco-friendly.
It ends up being a whole lot of green noise. It's hard to know how much of a positive effect these products have on the planet. But what if there's a way to have a clear, meaningful impact? groups of inspirational people working together around the world. At Johnson & Johnson, a family of companies, going green isn't a sticker we put on our products last week. Sustainability has been at the foundation of everything we do since 1943. We continue to further this vision with the Earthwords process. We created the Earthwords process so our product teams could assess the environmental and social impacts across a product's full life cycle and work to reduce them. How does it work? It's simple. We developed a process to evaluate our products in these 7 key categories. An Earthwords recognized product has achieved a significant improvement in at least 3 of these areas. Now, while the process is simple, we've set the bar high to ensure that Earthwords recognized products have improved in ways that matter most. Thanks to the ingenuity of our employees and the help of external experts, we are making this a reality with some inspiring results. From reducing the energy we use in manufacturing, to drastically streamlining product packaging, and significantly minimizing hazardous waste. This is just the beginning. We're putting a stake in the ground. We've set a goal to have 60 Earthwords recognized products by 2015, and we're well on our way. This is where you come in. We need you. This is your opportunity to honor our history and contribute to our legacy. Your ideas, your commitment, our shared vision. The Earthwords process is our way of creating greener products and inspiring others to do the same.
So that's our way of really driving forward the future in our communities. Our final responsibility, of course, is to those of you who invest in J&J. J&J stock is well known as one of the more dependable stocks in the marketplace. We have had 30 straight years, probably I think we're in 31 years now, of adjusted earnings increases and dividend increases for longer than I've been alive, which is a nice thing to have. So people constantly invest in J&J. You'll often hear J&J. Alex Gorski is routinely featured on some of the different MSNBCs and other shows because he comes in to talk about what J&J is doing as an old company to actually grow and to continue to maintain, bless you, its financial, its financial position as a very safe organization. When the dot-com downturn in the market occurred a few years back, J&J did not have any issues because J&J is very financially secure. Because it is a global company, it has to weather all the global and economic changes. And because it believes in being here for the future of our consumers, it's a very financially safe company, which does make investment a little harder, yes, but it does make investment a lot better. And so we live to the credo, we live to all of those other pieces. And what you will find is that cost is not the discussion when something affects one of the other 3 pieces of the credo. So to recall Tylenol a few years ago, we took a product that was over $1 billion off the market. It just happened about 4 years ago. Most people don't realize it, but Tylenol's been pretty hard to find over the last 4 years. And we did that because it was the right thing to do at the time. It was $1 billion. Most of us can't even picture that money in our pockets, right? And the company said, sorry, but this is what we have to do. And that's what they did. So it's a pretty substantial value stream that we see here. So the reason we bring this up for you all is that at some point, and this is just a thank you because those are all J&J people who appeared in those various pictures. We want you to decide to come to work for J&J, right? We want you to know your passion. We want you to understand a company's culture. If any of you have worked or co-op for multiple companies, you understand how different one company is from another, right? Right down to how people are treated and things of that nature. It's very hard in an interview to understand a company's culture and whether or not you're going to like the decisions they make. When I graduated from Drexel, I went to work for a company called NCR, which was National Cash Register, which was a computer company at the time. They no longer exist, and it's probably because they didn't live into some of the credo ethics that a J&J lives into. And I found myself, after having co-op at J&J and then going to NCR, actually about 6 months in, feeling very uncomfortable because I didn't like the way things were going. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I just didn't like the way people were treated. I didn't like the way people's careers were being developed, and I didn't know that. I didn't understand what that meant. But you have the ability now through meetings with companies like ours and meeting and online to go and talk to people who work for companies. I encourage you, I strongly, strongly encourage you to make sure that you pick a company that you get up every morning and feel good about going to work for. Because it's really hard when you don't. And you have to feel good about it because many of you are going to put nights and weekends and move for the company. You'll pick up your families and move to different areas of the country or the world for those companies. And you have to feel really good about working for that company. I have worked for 30 years for an organization who believes in the betterness of people. I can do that every morning. I'm here on a Saturday, not because I'm a Drexel alum, but because I'm here for J&J, right? And I do that because I believe in what we do, not just that we make a lot of money for people on the stock market, right? So you have to think about that. Think about that when you make your choice. You have lots of choices. Make a good choice. All right. Now, I want to talk to you about supply chain. I'm going to shift over now and get into talking about what it's like to work in the supply chain and why the supply chain is actually a pretty cool place to be. And I'm going to talk a lot about the key components of the supply chain. I'm going to talk about it, though, from an entry-level perspective, because I understand that was my mission for today, was to talk about you have career choices coming up. Where can you get into an organization? Where can you get into the supply chain? And does it matter where you get into a supply chain? Is there one place better than another? And so we'll talk about that. I want you to ask questions because you've been quiet so far, but please ask questions and we'll go from there. All right, so supply chain management and supply chain. Let's talk about what is the supply chain. The supply chain in a producing company, so like in a manufacturing organization, is about making product. And it's about all of the things that you do to get to make the product and then get to ship the product to your customer. But there are many supply chain aspects that are like services as well. So when you think about supply chain, hospitals are now very interested in supply chain management. It's a new frontier for hospitals. And the reason is because we've all discovered how expensive it is to go to the hospital, right? And the hospital wants to make things less expensive. They want to be more profitable so they can stay open and attract great doctors and research. But what they found out is if they have a Band-Aid on floor 2, they have 5 Band-Aids on floor 3. And they have sutures in every department in the hospital. Can you imagine the inventory that they have? Because they don't have a supply chain. Every head nurse on every floor calls up and orders what they need. And they put it in their closet. So they have it there for when you're in the hospital. They don't have a supply chain. They have just the wild, wild west. And what they found when hospitals, key big hospitals started to form, these networks of hospitals, they found that they went in and they had 10 times the inventory that they might ever use in their hospital. All that money tied up in supplies that were probably going to expire before they use them, right? And you wonder why it costs so much to stay in the hospital. It's because of things like that. And hospitals now understand the value of the supply chain. Walmart understood the value of supply chain years ago, and Dell, right? Where they recognized that if they could move things through supply chain faster, get things to their end destination and sell them and turn their money faster, they actually became much more profitable and they grew and grew and grew. And they could do it in such a way where when you bought a Dell computer, you felt like you were buying one that was made just for you, even though it was the same one that someone else bought because all you had was a menu of options, but you felt like it was your personally constructed computer, right? So supply chain has become a real game changer in the marketplace today. And so we always joke about this because we like to think very highly of ourselves. But we say, if you want to change the world, come work in supply chain because we can change the world. We can do things faster, better, different, and really make companies a very different organization. So I'll talk through these. But we look at supply chain from four different aspects. And in J&J, we believe that you have to traverse all of the aspects of supply chain, not just focus on one. So some companies, and we talked about culture, and some companies, if you go to work for them, they're going to look for a planning resource and a planning expert. And we call this the career pyramid. And you can see where you could start at an analytical level, go to a manager level, go to director level, go to a vice presidential level. And in some companies, you can go all the way up that pyramid in the plan function. And I'll tell you a little bit about what planning is. But J&J said that's not exactly right, because the reason we call it the supply chain is because it's a series of chronological links, right? No one function works without the other functions in the chain. And so therefore, to make a strong leader, to develop the right skill sets and to develop the ability to make a right decision or a good decision, you have to actually understand plan, source, make, and deliver. So plan is one function, source is one function, make is one function, and deliver is one function. They're very broad, and they're very, that's an industry. If you go to APICS, you go to what's called the SPOR model, things of that nature in supply chain. These are the terms that are used across the board to mean the different functions. So our career pyramids would say you do things in all of these, and then you advance to the next level, and then you do things in many of them again, and then you keep advancing through your career. So we don't want someone to stay in planning for their whole life. We want someone who wants to come in and learn the entire business end to end and move through the corporation or move through the ladder of success from there. Any questions on that? Because it is different. It is different than many companies out in the world today.
So, which areas have you worked in all?
I've worked in all.
Okay.
And I'll show this a little bit to you later, but that is actually my career. But it can kind of go like this. It doesn't happily go in any one given chronological direction. It goes as opportunities arise and you go up the ladder from there. Okay? And there are some areas that are more fun than others, and there are some areas that are actually pretty cool. So let's talk about planning for a minute. This is the area of the business where you are responsible to create the series of activities of which the company will then act against. So in the supply chain, you're going to plan production, you're going to plan launches, you're going to plan things that are going to happen. And your job is to make sure that all the pieces come together. So if you like to know everything, because my husband always tells me I like to know everything, this is a great place for you to be, because you actually have to put all of the pieces together and you have to understand the sequence in which they can happen, the capacity that we have in our organization, and the ability to make it all come together, and the deadline on which it's due. Usually you get the deadline and then you back the plan up from there. So planning is one of those positions where your job changes probably every day because you learn new things. So I'll give you an example. Anybody have a cold or a flu this year? Okay. We had the worst cold and flu season for children in the last 10 years. It happened for about 4 weeks. And after that, they got their parents sick, but it really wasn't as bad as the children getting sick. We sold, or could have sold, had we had enough finished goods to sell, probably an entire year's worth of product in less than 3 weeks. Okay? Nobody, children's Tylenol, by the way. Nobody's ready for that. To have an entire year's worth of product ready, sitting there. You heard about the children and the flu and all of the kids that were out of school and everything else. And you know what happens, kids come back after Christmas, they get germy in school, and then everybody in school's sick, and then it kind of goes from there, right? In fact, we encourage people to go to the mall and get everybody else sick, just for business. Please ride the escalators, hold on to the handrail. But that's what a planner wakes up one morning and says, oh my gosh, I sold all of my inventory yesterday. Right? How do I get more? What do I do? Where am I going to get the inventory to sell today? And that happens in a business like the cold and flu business. A couple of years ago, when Oprah had the 4 o'clock show on TV, and she would have, every day she had a talk show, and there was a day when she mentioned one of the J&J products. The next day, Walgreens bought every package we had. Every last one we had, they would have bought more if we had more. We had nothing to sell to the rest of the world, right? All because Oprah said something, that she used the product. She said, I took something this morning, and all of a sudden, every last bottle was gone at Walgreens. All these things happen all the time. And so that's why I say it's a very dynamic environment. Some other fun things that happen, sometimes your competitors can't make their product. And when they can't make their product, Walmart comes to you and says, I have an ad spot in this week's Sunday flyer. Would you be willing to put your product in there because your competitor can't make their product? And so they're falling out. They go, oh, yes, I want that, right? But do I have the ability to support that? How many times have you gone into the store and they don't have what you want? It's pretty popular, right? It's actually we call it a disease state in our business, right? In our business, in the consumer goods business, you need to be on shelf and fill orders at more than 99% every time. At J&J, an order comes in, has about 400 items on the order. You can have any quantity from one case to thousands of cases. And our objective is always to fill it at 100%. But when something like Oprah said something about your product the day before, you start to not fill orders, right? It's very, very difficult. It's benchmarked to fill orders at 98.5%. So I want you to think about every time you walk into a room and a light switch is turned on. What if that only happened 98% of the time? What if you were sick and you needed our product and you went to the store and it wasn't there? What do? Do you drive to another store and look for it? Or do you buy whatever else is on the shelf? So as a consumer, if you're sick, you go to the store, you're looking for a product, my product is not there, you're going to buy something that's there. The next time you're sick, what are you going to buy? What are you going in to look for? The same thing you bought, right? So I've not only lost your sale right now, I've lost your sale the next time and potentially for the future. You are now not my consumer because I've lost your trust, right? That's what a planner's job is all about. How do I make sure I have the right amount of inventory in the right places to cover every one of your needs when you have that need? And you are not going to be able to give me a call and tell me you're going to get a cold next week. So I need to figure out how to know that, right? So there's forecasting, there's modeling, there's a lot of analytics, there's a lot of history studying in terms of, hey, when did the cold and flu season happen last year? And what did it look like? And how did we deal with it? Things of that nature, right? When a new hair care product comes out, believe you me, the Aveeno gang is scrambling to understand what L'Oreal is doing in the hair care marketplace, because all of a sudden people will get coupons and they will go buy a different shampoo and they won't be buying our shampoo. The one thing that we do count on is when people have babies, they generally buy our baby shampoo. And that's why you always see J&J, you see the baby shampoo bottle. Everybody knows it even when it's in a shadow. Everybody knows the baby shampoo bottle. And that's something that we are very, very proud of because we like caring for babies, because babies grow up into purchasing consumers, right? All right, so that's what planning is about. Oh, by the way, any major. Some majors are more conducive to this, but any major that you have, you can come into the planning function in. We want someone who's a good communicator. That's not limited to a certain career path, right? We want somebody who's ready for a fast pace, get up and run in the morning, right? Get up and move. And systems mastery. You're all very used to working in systems. We work in SAP in J&J. Everyone knows SAP is not a fun system to work in, right? I love SAP. I've put it in 7 times in 7 different companies. It's hell. But it's not the easiest of things to do, so you have to be really good at managing your systems. The one thing you cannot do is stop thinking, because the system is not always right. And you have to be able to think and understand. But planning is an opening for anybody to come in. Sourcing, this one is one of my favorites because I do love to shop. I love to spend someone else's money. I think that's a pretty cool thing to do. And I like to build relationships. So I have many supplier relationships in my purchasing and my sourcing career days that I still actually have 20 years later, because you build a relationship with a supplier and you build a very deep relationship, even down to knowing the supplier's financials, so that you can understand profit margins and understand the impact on your company. Sourcing is very important because almost everything we make is made up of things that we bought. There's very little that we vertically integrate that we own all the way through to the growing of the product itself, right? So we are very dependent on suppliers. Dana was in our procurement team and understands. We have thousands of suppliers. Most of them are nowhere near where you're making something. They're around the world. And so you have global relationships. I don't know how many of you have global relationships now, but timing of phone calls with Asia Pacific countries is really awkward. And to have a supplier who has an office in Europe and has an office in Asia Pacific is actually really fun, because there's no good time zone between those ends of the world, right? So you get a lot of exposure, though, to the rest of the world. You get a lot of exposure to cost. And you get a lot of exposure to value, because there are differences in cost and value. If something costs 5 cents but comes in half the time it's defective, but something that costs 10 cents is never defective, which is a better value? Which one do you want in your organization? If you drive at cost, you could be driving at an answer that won't get you to the end product that you want to get to. So you have to be able to walk into a supplier and assess whether or not they can profitably make the product that you're going to buy from them, whether they can do it compliantly, and whether or not they can sustain it, right? So they have the infrastructure to sustain it. So when you're in sourcing, I had a manufacturing background when I went into sourcing, because I could go out and assess how people's quality processes were. I could audit their facilities and understand if they had good safety practices. I could understand how they were charging for their product, because I understood the cost of running the business. So procurement is actually one of the best places for an engineer to go, because you actually can determine whether or not it's a sustainable relationship. It's an interesting slant. I have a son who's a chemical engineer who couldn't picture being in purchasing, heat shopping. But he's actually very much in a role like that right now in one of his co-ops. And he's like, I never got it. I never understood. But he's out auditing suppliers and understanding whether or not they're capable of making that product. So sourcing is not just about finances or financial justifications or costs and who knows. It's really about, can you actually build a relationship that will keep your product in business? Because remember, I have to keep my product on the shelf more than 99% of the time, right? So if my supplier isn't capable, then what do? How many of you know about the port strike on the West Coast right now? Yeah, there's about 35 or more very large ships stuck in the port on the West Coast. They actually settled the strike, they settled the contract last night and signed. It's been since July that the West Coast port in California, out in Southern California, has been at a very slow pace for almost they came to a stop a few weeks ago, taking in product. Tommy Hilfiger did not have their new shirts in the store for Christmas because they were on a boat in the port. The boats in the port are tying up significant amounts of containers. You've seen those, they're tractor trailer beds, right? They're on those boats that are coming to us. Well, we don't have enough trucks to drive around the US right now because they're stuck on boats, because there's an exchange process that goes on. Something comes off the boat, gets emptied, and then gets filled back up with something else and goes somewhere else, right? So this strike out on the West Coast has significantly impacted a bunch of companies. And our company, J&J, knew this was coming. We have good relationships with our suppliers through our sourcing. And we knew this was a possibility. And we said, okay, we're going to just not come through the West Coast port. And we have stopped coming through the West Coast port for our products probably for a year now. So it's an incremental $500,000 to do that. So we come through the Panama Canal, we fly in, or we come into the East Coast, right? So we sail on different routes. One of our suppliers, who purchases a resin material to blow a bottle that we put Listerine in, actually didn't take the same course of action and is now shut down because they can't get the resin that they were getting from the China area in through the port. It's probably going to be another 2 months before their boat actually queues up to hit the dock and the stuff to come off of the boat, and they can't make any bottles for us. So now we as J&J, who are trying to have our product on the shelf 99% of the time, can't access the bottles that we need because our supplier didn't take care of their supplier. So when you understand the supply chain, you realize it's not just about who's supplying you, it's who's supplying them and who's supplying them, right? And you have to be able to dig pretty deep. So that's a fun story. I'm dealing with that issue right now. My job is reliability, and reliability is about how often you're on shelf or how often you're off shelf. And so I have a whole team of people right now who are trying to figure out how to get more resin out of China. Or is there an alternate that we can quickly go prove equivalent, scientifically equivalent, and get back in business? Or we could be out of business on those products for 2 to 3 months. It's a pretty big deal from a dollar perspective. All right, so sourcing is pretty important. Again, if you like to negotiate, this is a good place to be. If you like the technical side of the business, this is a good place to be. If you like to travel, this is a good place to be because the suppliers are everywhere. This is a worldwide market. And if you're good at decision making, right? Because you cannot be engaged to the degree with the supplier that you really get to like them and you want to give them business. You have to actually make decisions on the basis of capabilities and objective reasons, right? So whether I like you or not is not the decision making factor on whether or not I do business with you. So you have to be very good at decision making. All right, you guys hanging in there? Because I know lunch is next, but it's in about 15 minutes. Is that all right? Okay, you're being quiet. I know what it's like to sit for a long period of time. You're welcome to march if you want to. Okay, so we talked about plan, we talked about source. The next piece of the chain is make. In the make organization, this is truly making things, right? This is truly assembling things, building them, constructing them, packaging them in a way that they can go out and be sold. We as J&J don't make any money if we don't sell our product. We make a lot of product, but if we don't sell it, we don't ever convert that to cash, right? So, do you like finding solutions? Do you like puzzles? Do you like problems? This is a great place to be. Do you like to figure out how things come together? Like, how does that work? How do you get it from where it is to where it needs to be? And if you're really into managing projects and you love these goals of fixing things and or delivering change, this is a great place to go. Yes, we do look for engineering majors for the most part in the make organization. You're going to spend a lot of time on the shop floor. You're going to spend a lot of time with equipment. You're going to spend a lot of time understanding force, understanding torque, understanding things that actually make our packaging work and make our products chemically work. So we do look for engineering majors, but I am a living example of someone who has spent a significant portion of her career in the make arena, in manufacturing, both on the shop floor and as a leader, and I have not got an engineering degree. Okay. So growing up with a dad who's an engineer doesn't count. So he would like to think so, but really, it's really something that you have to have an interest in. But you have to understand the other aspect of manufacturing is leading a team of people, right? Because there are people running these lines. These lines don't run themselves. They do a lot of things for themselves, but there's still people that make this process work, mechanics and laborers who actually observe and actually are the ones who push the stop button when things are going wrong in manufacturing. So you count extremely heavily on your people. One of the things that a leader in manufacturing does is manage people, and you're managing teams. One of my first experiences in manufacturing was walking in, I was a co-op, and I was doing some line testing of a new design on a carton for a cold and flu product. And I was probably 20 years old. Third shift. Everybody on third shift was male, number one, and number two, much older than me. And here I was coming in to tell them what to do, right? Really very interesting, really nice guys. So never had a problem, but when you think about it, that's what happens. That's what a supervisor is doing in manufacturing. Supervisor is generally supervising people who are more experienced than they are, older than they are, and have no reason to listen to them. But yet you have to motivate them. You have to make sure that they're making the right choices about the product that they're allowing to be packaged on that line, and that they're making those quality choices for all of us, right? We did some advertising a couple of years back where people in manufacturing actually volunteered to be in the advertising. And the whole campaign was about, would you sell this product? Would you give this product to your mom? Would you give this product to your daughter? Would you give this product to your wife? That's what we're saying here. Don't make something and let it out the door that you wouldn't give to your family, right? Because someone is going to use it, ingest it, or whatever. So don't make it if you wouldn't give it to your own family. And that's pretty interesting. But that's how you have to supervise, and that's how you have to lead in manufacturing. So it's a very people-oriented side of the business as well. All right, now deliver. This is a fun place. Deliver is all about what we call distribution. But distribution is only one piece of deliver because deliver includes transportation and deliver includes customer relationships. So if you have a little marketing interest and you like to work with Walmart, you work with Target, folks like that, what can we advertise, where can we put it, things of that nature. Deliver is a great space to be. We move product all over the world every day. There's kind of a big chart that says we have all these trucks in motion at any given time, 120,000 trucks in the US on J&J consumer business only. Some of them are on trains, some of them are on the road, some of them are going to go to an airplane, but for the most part, there's just this big network of things moving all over the place, coming in and going out. It's a fun place to be. A lot of impromptu decision making. Truck breaks down. Trucks break down all the time, right? What do you do? Do you need that stuff right away? Do you have to get another truck out there? Can you wait a day or two? Oh, it's really cold outside. What happens when your product freezes? If your truck breaks down right now, and you're on the East Coast, anywhere between probably North Carolina and Maine, what's the chance that your product's in freezing temperature? See that Visine? What happens to it when it freezes? Yeah, it separates. It gets cloudy inside. You probably wouldn't want to use it, right? So you have to watch all these shipments and know where these shipments are and know what's going on so that you've got your product protected. Now, sometimes we actually have refrigeration units on the truck, which are used to keep the truck at a constant temperature. But sometimes you don't because it's a short distance and you weren't planning for the truck to break down, right? We have the fun issue in this country of the truck driver pulls into a rest stop, goes in to get a sandwich, comes out, and his truck is gone. Yeah, because somebody stole his truck, right? He was in having a sandwich. Someone stole his truck. Unbelievable. Happens every day. Happens every day. Every day. If you go to Amazon, or I shouldn't say Amazon, go to eBay and type in Neutrogena. If you see anything on there, that's where it came from. It's probably stolen because we don't sell on eBay. And Walmart doesn't sell on eBay, and Target doesn't sell on eBay, right? Where do you think those things are? There'll be 2,000 screens come up when you type in Neutrogena on eBay. And it'll be all kinds of product, probably less than it cost me to make it. Okay, so think about that. And that's why you buy from reputable places, because you don't know exactly what you're getting and where it's been, whether it's been frozen or not, right? Listerine, the gold Listerine, the original Listerine, is 85% alcohol. It has to get to -40 to freeze it. And it has to sit there for probably 8 hours. It can be done. Walgreens proved it. So lots of fun stuff in this area, right? This is a pretty interesting, yeah, don't be drinking it. It's not that good. Trust me, it's not good alcohol. It's pretty cheap alcohol, no. But it's really, it's a dynamic spot because, again, just like in planning, not everything goes right. Not everything's within your control. And you have to figure out how to deal with the situations that come up. So you won't be bored, right? It's not like you're just doing the same kind of scheduling, or it's not like everything runs like a train schedule. It doesn't work that way. We're always looking for more cost-effective solutions, faster solutions. Something's late and has to get somewhere fast, and it's bigger than an airplane. Those kinds of things go on all the time. So there's a lot of creative problem solving and a lot of relationship building and a lot of decision making involved in these kinds of positions in the deliver space. How many weeks of inventory do you think Walmart has?
1.
Pretty close. Probably 2. And Target really only has inventory at the stores. Target has what's called a cross-dock situation. So when something gets into a Target distribution center, it immediately gets onto, within 24 hours, is on a truck going to one of their stores to be put into their stores. Very little back. There's no back room in CVS. So don't go to the manager and say, do you have more of something in your back room? They don't have a back room. In case you didn't notice, like they fill up the whole landscape of the store, right? There's no back room. So when they're out of stock, they're out of stock. You got to get stuff to them fast, and you have to get it through the process. If we have a problem like this bottle problem that we were just talking about with the port, resin stuck in the port, Walmart's going to be out of inventory in 3 weeks, right? Who's our biggest retailer in the country? And where's the best place for me to have my product to sell it to the most consumers at any given time? and I'm going to be out of stock in 3 weeks. Trust me, Kmart will have product for the next 15 because they have a very different inventorying strategy. And it's one of the reasons why stores like Kmart have been taken over by Sears and bought out by all kinds of other people, because they don't turn fast. They don't move their inventory. So they have a huge dollar tied up in their inventory. So it's a different supply chain. But in Walmart, where I really want to be, I can't take the product from Kmart and bring it to Walmart because it's not mine. I sold it to Kmart. And I can't go get it and move it someplace else. So this is where all of this supply chain, this is where plan, source, make, and deliver all comes together, because I'm going to be out of stock in Walmart in a couple of weeks. All because they couldn't get to a port contract out on the West Coast, right? Yeah. So fun stuff. All right. So my point to you is all of these positions are open to you as an entry level or as a person coming on store. There's no one right place to start because they're all connected. And if you saw and observed my career diagram, you can move. And we expect you to move every 2 years. We expect you to spend about 6 months mastering the job. All right, and I'm not kidding. I'm going to give you 6 months. I'll train you. I'll work with you. I'll heavily supervise you. And then after that 6 months, I expect you to do it without me needing to tell you how to do it. And then by months 12 through 18, I expect you to change the job. And you saw the other side of the pyramid, it said change leadership. I expect you to make the job better or eliminate the job, right? I do not expect you to give the job to someone else in the same shape that you got it, because your job is to leave your legacy, to leave your fingerprint on everything that you do, which means you're going to make things better, faster, more cost effective, whatever it takes. But your whole resume should be filled up with things that you have changed and have driven results on, not just things you have participated in, right? And I teach this when I teach down here to talk about your resume. If your resume says I participated on a team, I don't need you. I have lots of people who can participate. What I need is people who can increase, decrease, eliminate, change. I want to change everything I'm doing because I need to be better all the time. So think about your resume and think about what it says and think about what it could say if you're in a supply chain position where you're constantly improving cash, you're spending less money, improving quality, decreasing inventory, decreasing lead time, increasing output. There are so many things that you're going to change, which is why change leadership is the other piece of that pillar. And we don't talk about it as one of the key functions because it's in all of the functions. And when you come into your role in your 2-year period, I expect you to leave your job in a different place than you came in. So you will spend the last month of your job documenting your new job to hand it to someone else. Yes. But that's what I expect. I expect that of the co-ops in 6 months. Every co-op who comes in to our area, they get to learn the job and they get a goal that something is going to be eliminated or changed before they leave. And that's how we judge whether they're ready to come back to us again in the future. Okay? All right. So anywhere is full game. And you'll see we post positions everywhere. All right. Start anywhere, rotate, grow, and be prepared to lead, because we want leaders. We all want leadership in the future. I want to retire one day, and you all will run my company. And you better do a good job because I need money to live on. That's that stock price we were all talking about, right? So that's why I'm invested in growing your skills and developing you guys and in bringing in the right talent to J&J. So if you think J&J is the kind of place you want, trust me, we're gonna scrutinize who we bring in, because it's not just a person to participate. I'm bringing in a person to lead and change. And I'm bringing in a person who's going to have my company for the next 100 years so that we can put up there, it'll be 102 years of continuous dividend earnings increases, right? Not just 50 years. And that's what we're looking for in supply chain. Okay? Every year, so just for kicks, I have a minimum 10% cost improvement target every year in every department in supply chain. I challenge people to earn their salary back by decreasing spending by the amount of their salary. So if I'm going to pay you $100,000, I'd like $100,000 in benefit. Right? That's my deal. Everybody's like, really serious now. Right? I don't always get it, but it's a great goal to have. To say, I'm here at this company, you pay me this amount of money, and I bring you back this amount of value by doing something, changing something, and making something better. It's a really cool place to be. All right. This is me. There's my email, or I think my email is on the first slide if you need it. We have one talk again. I started here at Drexel. I went to Penn State after that, but I was working while I went to Penn State. I would normally be at Thon. No. Sometimes I do spend some time out there. I've worked in all three sectors. I've worked in consumer, I've worked in pharmaceuticals, and I've worked in medical devices. So that career, we talked about the 3 different places in J&J. I've been in the 3 different places. I've gotten a whole bunch of certifications in the process. I've run a manufacturing plant, 3 shifts a day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Made all the Mylanta and Pepsid in the world. It was a great plant. I had 185 people who knew me well enough to know where I lived and had them for dinner multiple times. If they had good performance, I would cook dinner. That was my goal. And you can feed people. They get very happy when you feed them. I have been, I was a part of the Pfizer integration, which was a $16 billion spend on J&J's part to bring the Pfizer consumer business into the Johnson & Johnson business. And that's where Listerine and Visine and products come in, because you took baby shampoo and you added other things to it. Consolidations and business development work is a very big part of our business. I have done 7 SAP implementations, and if you ever get to do an SAP implementation, seriously, first consider running in the other direction. And then realize you give your life away to SAP for the time period, and then you'll have a lot of fun. But it is it's a really difficult thing to put in. It's a culture change and the systems change. I always say I have 4 boys. My husband doesn't always like that statement, but he's probably the biggest of the kids that I have. But I have the 22-year-old is a civil engineer, the 20-year-old is a chemical engineering major, and the 18, soon to be 19-year-old is a baseball player. So we're still working on that one. But don't tell them about that. And I like to decorate cakes. So you've seen the Cake Boss and Duff and all those guys. So part of that little engineering bent that I have that's not really my education, I like to design things that should never happen in cake and then decorate them for fun. All right, that is my career. I have had lots of opportunities in my 29 years with J&J. I've probably had almost 18 jobs. So you don't always get to stay for 2 years, and sometimes you have 2 jobs at a time. Just happens that way. I currently have teams. I said I have teams in Canada. I have a team in Canada. I have a team in Fort Washington, which is McNeil, and I have a team in Skillman in consumer. I also have a partnership with folks around the world. I have a partner in Asia Pac, a partner in EMEA, and a partner in Latin America, so that we run the world together. And my whole job is that every time an order comes in, I want as close to 100% of that order filled every day, every hour. And that's how I get measured. And when we don't fill orders, and we don't have that high degree of customer satisfaction, that's my job on the line. All right, cool. You hungry? All right, well, I will stay. If you want to eat food and ask me questions, I will stay. But I hope that was fun. And I hope you think a little bit differently about the supply chain now. It's a pretty cool place to be. All right, cool. Thank you.
Feel free to stay, please ask questions, and our lunch is right outside. So we'll have like 45 minutes for lunch, stay, relax a little bit, and then we have one more speaker. She's from the University of Illinois representing a master's program, and then we're gonna do more solely NOBE
Seriously though, I feel like the week just because like the sun gets too hot. Also the stuff I put it in, I was like, I made my like a good charger with battery. Like there's a DIY on the shop. Yeah, pretty sure. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, like but they're also yeah, like live. Yeah, I know, but like last year.
Substitute in another size or another like product so they can fill their shelf up and not this. Well, because so that port unit is actually the entire West Coast port. So the big port is Los Angeles, is where the boats come in, but the workers are also fed on both sides, and actually the East Coast now too. So the East Coast is a mess as well. So you really, at this point in time, you have very few things to contribute that you can get into this. And actually have a truck driver sitting there waiting for you to put stuff on. Yeah. It's a very compromised. Can't cross the border. Customs. Try that all the time. The legalities are that you cannot move a product into Canada and then ship it into the US in order to, if you don't materially change it, you have to apply some value to it. You can't use it as a pass-through because it's considered a tax. We don't. Like Mexico doesn't have the same rule. Okay. With I think I can start Believe me, we do end up having a lot. There's not a lot of other ways to get it other than burger punch. And you run these stuff in so it costs you $1 to ship it on a boat, or $5 to ship it on a boat. The price you pay.
I don't know.
Like that, see, that's the problem solving, right? The solution generator is like, okay, Houston, we have a problem, right? Here's what we have. This is what we know. What can we do based on what we know? And the key is making sure that you know that your assumptions are valid. Because otherwise, somebody could see it come from Canada, and then everything would be sitting at the border, and we'd be paying fines every day, trying to get product to fuel, right? You have to trust
So I actually had a floor with somebody from McNeil, and it was for the supply chain position. They had like a list of 20 kids that chose to be one of the direction.